The committee audio, okay. The committee of the whole is back in order. Senator, we left off in Chapter 4, Section 1, Department of Public Health and Social Services, and we had Senator Judy Wampat with the floor. Senator Wampat.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'd just like to I guess, make sure that I have the right figures that you gave us on Saturday. You had indicated that you had 54 funded vacancies. 50. Okay, okay, but it's 54 with the employees, not counting the director. But on this single sheet that was just given to us, handed out to us, shows 17 positions on the top funded vacancies, and then on the bottom you have another 17, and it totals to 34. And if you had indicated that you had 54 funded vacancies, where are the other 20?
Senator, what is there on before you is a single page. The 46637 grand total on the midpoint of the page, that is the department's plan to meet the department reduction of 46637 using these 17 positions that are that are currently funded and that are vacant. We will then, what the senators had also asked during Saturday's brief session was if we could break down, and that's what is provided for you, is off the 17 positions, 2 of them are admin aides, 2 of them are bus drivers.
Oh, okay.
So that's one separate list, Senator.
Okay, so this is only 17 then?
Yeah, 17 positions that are currently funded, we are proposing to unfund so that we would meet the 46637 reduction.
Okay, but then do you have the listing for the other positions? Because there's 54 is what you told us.
Yes, Senator, what had happened after Saturday is we went in on Sunday. We called some staff in to verify the entire department's staffing pattern and all the personnel actions that that have occurred. And so we have now provided you an update. The run date is April 1st at about 6:19 p.m. And so what was initially 54.
We don't have that. I'm sorry.
Oh.
Well, what are you reading?
Senator Wampat, there are copies being made right now for you.
Okay.
The total, there's a listing of 70. Is it 70?
That is correct. There's 70
okay.
funded vacancies right now in public health and social services, separate from the 17 that is being identified to meet the 46637 shortfall. And I just wanted to share with the senators that on page 2 is kind of a summary of the 70 positions, the number that are 100% general fund funded, matched, federal, and special fund. And so we just wanted to try to go through this process in the best way we can.
So the 70 on this long spreadsheet does not include the 17.
That is correct.
Okay, so then let's go back to your 17. So in the 17, take the ones from DPW, from number 8 down to number 17. You have in parentheses 50%, and then in the bottom two, 91%. Can you explain what those are?
Sure. That is the local site. For example, in number 8, that position is a Secretary 1 typist. That's a 50% local fund required match or general fund, and then the federal site would be 50%. So if we were to unfund that position, the local general coffer site would be relieved or released of that requirement to meet the 50% match. It's a 50-50 match position.
So you've made the decision then that in particular these positions that have a federal matching to forgo those in order to stay within the $460,000.
Yes, and there was a process involved, Senator. I met with all the division heads, all the respective division heads of the different divisions of public health and social services, and this was also through their recommendation as well, in terms of meeting their operations.
So these positions that are federally funded, would it in any way hamper your federal programs, any of your federal programs, where you receive federal funding?
Well, the way it would hamper, Senator, would be that we did not maximize the federal potential match that is offered to us for these positions. And that definitely is an impact in and of itself. But in terms of the operations, again, I've asked all the division heads of the various divisions within public health and social services to provide guidance and recommendations, and this is what was received. And so we support their recommendations.
And the number 16 and 17, the 91%, is that local or is that federal?
That would be 91% of a local funded position, and 9% would be the federal share.
Okay. Now, on the just before we left on Saturday, we were on the on the topic of the department's total appropriation, and we had asked for you to get a clarification of the $8,743 and a release of 77%. And John, I think you indicated that those were the general fund portion, and I don't understand because when we were looking at, if you look at your total budget, those numbers are not reflected from, I mean, how could that be a local versus what your total appropriation would be?
Senator, just to clarify that the $8 million that was discussed at the oversight hearing was reflective of the 100% local. So it did not include the percentage of allotment released that was matched for federal grant monies as well.
So for the total, but I thought the total amount that's appropriated to public health is greater than $8 million.
Correct, but
And so you're saying that only $8 million is a 100% locally funded program.
programs, positions, etc.
And positions.
Yes, the remaining portion is the match for federal money.
And then the remaining then could be anywhere from the 9% to
Correct.
50% or whatever the highest percentage is.
Correct. That's right.
So then, so when you've released, when DOA released then the 100% of, or 77% of the 100% government-funded program, local funding, then how are the others operating then if it's only for the 100% locally funded programs? That doesn't make any sense.
No, I don't think we're saying that that's all the money that was released. I think the discussion was relative to just those funds that are 100% local.
But it doesn't. So you're saying then, although you may have qualified it to mean that the 100% locally funded program monies have been released, but the director for that agency has the flexibility to decide how much of that can be used for all the other programs then that are partially fairly funded?
No. The discussion on the $8 million during the oversight hearing was specific to just that portion of their appropriation that was 100% local funding. The discussion was not relative to that portion that was to match federal funds. So it's not to say that $8 million, that 77% of $8 million is all that's been released in the allotment. It's to say that in those programs that are 100% local funding, that's the portion that had been released. They do, Public Health does have the report on their allotment releases for local, federal match, and special funds with them today.
So the director then, I'd like for you then to explain then, if you've received, is that the only dollar amount that you have received at least and as of March 13?
Senator, as of March 13, you're speaking of account A, the general fund 100%.
Well,
We received year-to-date.
is he looking at the same sheet that came from OFB?
I'm sorry. What was happening? They were passing out a copy of all the accounts for appropriation and the allotment releases. That's what. So those copies are being disseminated. I'm sorry. My attention was on that.
Oh no, then I have not received a copy of that yet. Is it going around?
Senator Wampat, what was the question? I'm sorry. Have they answered your question?
I'm trying to understand the clarification of when, or corroboration by John about the 8 million that was from the total appropriation of the locally funded programs, that they have a percentage of the appropriation was 77%. But you have many other programs that are matching, have federal matching, and so I'm just trying to figure out then that if you've only released for certain programs, let's say, then how are you managing with the other programs that you have not received monies for?
Senator, we have from the 8 million, which is 100% GF, general fund, year to date they've released 5.3, and on the matched account, we have 5.3, right? 5 million 338 596.78, 5.3, and for the local match, they've released about 11 million, 11.2.
11.2 is for the general fund?
For the local match, to match the federal programs, the federal match requirement.
Oh, the federal matching is the 11.2.
Right. We're looking at about 16.5 million that has been released to date.
Okay.
And this is a run date on our system on April 3rd.
Okay, so that explains it then,
Right.
because then it was, when you said 8 million last Saturday, then that was an incomplete information, and that's the reason why I couldn't figure out how you were operating then with only 8 million. On the long sheet that you gave us, there are other positions here that you're saying then basically that these are the positions that are vacant and are funded. How many of these positions here can you identify that has been vacant for over a year, or even 2 years for that matter?
Senator, I don't have that information available right now. We'd have to go back and look at the history of the position and identify off the 70 how many of them have been vacant for 2 years, is what you're asking. Is that correct? Yeah. I'd have to go back and work with the personnel office staff that have been assigned to do this. In
Can you
2
please
years,
make sure that that's available then to the chairperson
to
who
the
would
chair?
then share it with us?
2 years.
Yes,
or,
2
or
years.
Older, or older.
You're right. Okay. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you very much, Senator Wampat. Senator Pangilinan?
This is Masi, Mr. Chair. And good afternoon, Art and Peter,
Senator.
and the panel there. Art, we seem to be coming in here, and the presentation that you're giving us is how to reduce the authorization level, not the current operating level. Now, the problem we have is really not the authorized expenditure level, because you say that if we cut this, you're not going to have any denigration in services or reduction in services. Yet, we find that, for example, in the legal services contract for the Manamco, which is funded, which is authorized, which is ongoing, which requires cash to operate,
Right.
we find that you are not getting the funds to run that program. As a matter of fact, the program's contractor has canceled the contract due to non-payment. Is that correct?
That is correct.
How much do you owe that contractor?
I have a staff member from the Division of Senior Citizens present. I can ask that the administrator and their AO, who was outside as well, bring that over.
Well,
Would
let's
be
just
acceptable?
say
approximately maybe 200 to 300, perhaps.
dude, almost 300,000.
Yes,
Yet that program was funded.
Yes, it was.
So in this cut that is being proposed of 460, when you say funded, it doesn't mean that you've been getting the cash to fund that position and you don't have the body to pay, correct?
That is correct. This is based on, as you have clearly indicated, Senator, this is based on the bills, based on the appropriation level.
So we find that the problem we are facing in this legislative body and in the administration is how to pay for our current operating, not for some staffing pattern with nobody to pay, but we have a position and we have a line item in the budget or in the staffing pattern that says if this was filled, we would pay this amount. So how do you propose to assist, I guess, in meeting the operating needs of this government by this 460 doesn't do us anything. It doesn't really bring us any closer to making sure that those vital legal services for the Manamco, which has been funded, which is part of your department, which the administration has not released the cash to pay since November, December, January of last year, and January of this year, it's not been released. How do we get to a point where the cuts that we make are going to allow us to pay for that service that we're authorized and have been consumed? It doesn't help.
That question, I believe, sir, Mr. De La Rosa may want to respond to.
Senator, I'm going to take a shot at this. It's a little difficult to have the conversation specific to one appropriation area without looking at the context of the entire plan that it was proposed by the governor. The plan did have two components to it: augmenting the revenues and then appropriate reductions in the appropriation levels as well, and to kind of bring revenues up and appropriations down so that they match and we can balance the budget. But we've, from the beginning, said that we did have two challenges. It was balancing the revenues and the appropriations given the level of revenues that are coming in today, as well as a cash problem. We do have problems with the amount of cash that's actually coming into the government. And I think Lou Perez has gone on record saying that she's had upwards of $28 million in payables to vendors. And part of our package was, as we adjust revenues and appropriations and allow for those revenues to come into the government, there was also a capital financing component to it as well that would help us ease the cash flow crisis in it. But so in the context of just this appropriation and what Art and his people have proposed to do, it was in the context of that plan. I understand what you're saying. We do have outstanding payments that are not being made, and we don't have the cash coming in to make them, and that's a problem tied to this, but also separating the cash.
Okay. So what we have to first stop is adding new costs, correct?
Correct.
Now, Art, in these all the vacancies that you have, you decided, I guess, or somebody decided, that one of the vacancies that was appropriated and funded for, that had not been filled before, that you were going to fill, was a secretary position, correct?
That we're going to fill or not fill?
That you have filled. Didn't you just hire a secretary recently?
Are we speaking perhaps of a private secretary?
Perhaps.
Then that would be correct.
Now, that was an appropriation that was funded, correct? Obviously, that's the only way you could fund that position.
Right, that is correct.
Now, you decided that you were going to fund that private secretary. Where did that private secretary come from?
Where did she come from? What do they call the company? A transition telephone transition GTA transition office.
So from the front office, basically.
Yes.
Yes. So we decided that of all the vacancies at public health, the one we were going to fund was a private secretary position that was being transferred out of the governor's office, basically, into public health. That's the problem we have. When we obligate these positions that we didn't need to obligate, and then it's even a little bit more insulting, I think, to then have it transferred out of the front office to go to public health. We have a problem when you say you want to cut positions, and those are the type of positions you decide to fill and accept, and they're coming from the front office. It just doesn't make sense. The seriousness of the nature and the seriousness of the administration with regards to trying to match revenues and expenditures just doesn't cut it with me when those are the type of matches you're trying to do. And you know, maybe I shouldn't direct this to you. I should direct it to Mr. De La Rosa, because this was a decision, obviously, that came out of the front office. You know, and it just it baffles me that we're going to cut these other positions that have nothing to do with cash outlay, that do nothing at all to resolve a financial situation, and then we add an expenditure of another body, and it's coming from the front office. These are the type of actions, I think, that somehow, causes me to question these things. Do we still have outstanding payables with Medicaid, pharmacy, and vendors?
Yes, we do, Senator.
Are we, because of the level of funding that have been released for those programs, do we have vendors that have decided that they will no longer obligate themselves to carrying the debt of this government by saying we're not going to accept new costs or we're not going to provide new services to these individuals until we get paid for the old one?
Senator, my ASO is with me, but she doesn't have that information readily available at this time. But at this point, services and the supplies to our health centers are ongoing. We haven't yet received that red flag that says they're not getting any more meds. They stopped this service. There's a lot of internal tracking going on right now, but we'll need the ASO to. If you would like to look at a vendor list, we'd have to get some time to put that together for you.
But I'm just saying that, so you mean every pharmacy out there is accepting Medicaid right now?
No.
That's exactly what I mean. That's the type of when you're telling me that we're not going to impact services because we're going to cut $460,000, it really is not the case. The case is, with our current operating costs, we are impacting services because the Department of Public Health is not getting, from its current operating costs, is not getting the necessary resources to pay for those programs, and the people are not getting it. So while we may cut this authorization of $460, we're doing nothing to improve the services from our current operating costs, and that's the fear I have with the way this budget is structured. And that's the problem I have with regards to these. It appears to me that the program does not address those issues, or the proposal I have before me. I don't see the earmarking of any additional revenues that we save going to program funds at the Department of Public Health and Social Services that would allow the people out there to even access at our current operating level. I think that if we proceed in this manner with the cuts and so forth and reducing the authorization levels, that we will in fact see a denigration in services and a reduction in available service outlets for recipients under public health and social services. And that, Mr. Chair, is the fact I think that I'm facing, and in my perspective on what the proposal will do to the Department of Public Health. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Senator Pangilinan. Senator Respicio.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, I understand that we are in Chapter 4 right now, going line by line, agency by agency, to determine whether or not these agencies can absorb the 2.5% cut. I guess I just have a point of order or a point of information. If the committee
State your point of information,
thank you,
please.
sir. If the committee of the whole has adopted a revenue estimate, revised revenue estimate for the current fiscal year.
There has been nothing adopted. We are now on the Chapter 4, and we are going over the appropriations. There has been a rule set that before we are to address any restoration of appropriations to the original appropriation level, that we would first have dispensed in all areas that are mentioned in this appropriation area, all divisions and agencies.
But just as the previous speaker expressed concern with how we're addressing the current bill that we're going to eventually pass and transmit to the governor, fundamentally, Mr. Chairman, I have a concern that we're determining expenditures without first acknowledging how much money this government has to spend. Now, it's a cart before the horse, and I'm asking.
Senator Respicio,
I know I've been gone.
Senator Respicio, I'm going to hold you right here. We've gone through a week of discussing earlier matters in revenues. We are now in the expenditure side. I'm glad to see you back. And if you have any comments or questions into Chapter 4, Section 1, public health, I'm going to allow that. But if
Well,
we're going to
Mr.
delve,
Chairman, I
so
was
do you have a
away
question?
I was away for medical concerns, but I'm back.
I'm sorry to hear
obviously
that, Senator Respicio.
I haven't missed a beat, but I heard you made some pronouncements that the Committee of the Whole has adopted $451 million.
Do not make a statement or a question. Do you
But
have a question for the
it
chair?
was your quote in the various media sources, Mr. Chairman, that they're looking at a number closer to 451. I'm asking if any formal
Tell you
motions
what,
have been made to
Senator
adopt the
Respicio,
revenue.
I'm not going to quote from a newspaper. If you want to read read the article and ask the reporter. We're now delving into
Mr. Chairman, I'm
section.
not.
If you have no questions in chapter
But
1,
I'm not asking that we go back to do the revenue analysis. I'm simply asking, has a number been adopted? Because we can begin to address our expenditures if we first don't know how much we have to spend. It's
okay.
a
There has been
fundamental
no.
concern I
there
have
has,
in a
we are
flaw in this
now
current
on
process.
public law. Our bill number 74. We are moving now towards the chapter 4. We are in section 1. There has been no adoption of any portion of bill number 74.
Then I
So
make a
again,
motion that we revert back to chapter 2 and adopt a
Point of
revenue
order,
estimate.
Mr. Chair. Wasn't the rule that when we went section by section, it was to amend or delete,
Oh, there, amend to delete. You're correct.
amend or delete, and that once we move past that section, if there are no amendments or deletions, then that section is adopted.
That is correct. My apologies.
So in fact, we have adopted a revenue figure since we've gone past the revenue number, and I believe that number is 453, 733, 719.
451. They made a little
451?
adjustment. Yeah.
Okay.
My apologies. What I was talking about is this particular section, and again, in the section on appropriations, and I'm going to reiterate, in the section on appropriations, we are going department by department, and from there we will address any amendments on a reduction on appropriations. But
I understand. I'm simply requesting what number has been adopted. I'm following the adopted Committee of the Whole, and I do have the same number of 453,
I'm glad to see
733,
you back, Senator
719.
Respicio. We are moving at
But
the
Mr.
pace you
Chairman,
would like.
just answer my
So, tell
question.
you
What
I'm going to
is
request
it-
for the clerk, if the clerk can pass out the revised revenues that, again, as based on what was presented by the administration and the amendments made to the body, we will have that provided to you, Senator.
And this number was
Yes.
adopted in the Committee of the Whole.
Continue with your questions.
Just a matter of clarification, Mr. Chairman.
Yes.
Also, further to the, before we recessed last Saturday, the Speaker, Speaker Forbes, also mentioned that, we are going to go section by section, and insofar as the revenue is concerned, there'll be a lot of adjustment accordingly, and so the adoption thereof has not really been made, but there's a flexibility that we come back later on to address it.
And the end result of that process is your revenue always matches what your expenditures are. So I'm
Senator,
simply asking,
okay.
let's determine the revenues and then go item by item on the expenditures.
Senator, do you have a question?
Yes.
Do you have a question,
You
please?
obviously don't like the question I'm asking, Mr. Chairman, because I'm asking this body to recognize what the revenue estimates will be. From then, you go expenditures item by item, so you determine what your balance is, whether it's a plus or negative. You don't do your revenue estimate after you determine what your obligations are.
Let me explain, since you've been gone a week. What has occurred, has there been amendments in the revenues? And because of these amendments, there has been adjustments in the numbers. Then obviously what has occurred now, we have deliberated again on these particular sections, chapter 4, and originally in chapter 3, which dealt with education, there has been certain adjustments in appropriations with a restoration in two particular areas. And with that, we have been moving forward, and again, I'm going to reiterate what was the rules subsequent to judiciary restoration, that would be moved forward, and we would move forward with the particular sections, section by section, in regards to the different departments, and there would be an entertainment of amendments to delete.
So is the
And
number...
then that's where we are at this point. Again, what I'm stating is, after we're through with every section, we can then move forward, because obviously in the miscellaneous provisions, and again, within
So is
those
the number
miscellaneous provisions, there
453
may
or
be-
451? That's all I'm asking, Mr.
I do not have
Chairman.
the number. Can we have the clerk please pass out a copy for Senator Respicio?
So that
on
would
the exact-
determine right now if it's 453, then we have a $20.8 million gap that we have to fill. I just want to know.
Tell you what we'll do. We'll take a 1-minute recess
you.
just for the senator to get his revenue projection and get up to speed on where we've been. On the movements and the decisions of the legislature the past week.
And it's the same number I have
Yeah.
come to independently, Mr. Chairman. So the number for the record is $453,733,719. That's
Correct.
the number we're working with.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, thank you very much, Senator Respicio. We're still in Public Health, Section 1. Okay, Public Health, Section 1. Are there any other comments or questions on Section 1 or Department of Public Health and Social Services? What do you- Senator Pangilinan, there was a question that you had made earlier, and they have an answer to that. So I'm going to get the microphone back to you. You can maybe reiterate the question, and then, of course, you would have the answer.
Yeah.
Okay?
Yeah, I think the question was in reference to the outstanding amount owed to the Senior Citizens Legal Services contract.
That is correct, Senator. First of all, you're right that they did move for termination. I do want to assure the senators that we do have emergency procurement in place, and as a result, we still have that legal services contract on that status. However, with regards to just providing the information in terms of payment, the former provider has been paid for October, November, and December, first quarter fiscal year 07. We still owe for January, February, and we have yet to get the March invoice. So we have outstanding right now, January and February, in the amount of $30,930.34.
Okay. Art, if I may just do a follow-up question then. Again, we're going through this budget process trying to cut the appropriation level. What I'm concerned is, what is the need of the department to pay for its current operating obligations so that we don't jeopardize the services being provided. For example, we go back to the legal services contract.
Right.
There was a time there where the vendor said, I'm not seeing any more manamcos, I'm not taking new cases, and so we went for a period of time where that service was not available because the cash or the cash was not given to the Department of Public Health to pay for that service that we've said we're going to provide. Now, so there was a gap there when the contractor said, no more new cases, I'm just going to resolve these existing ones and then I'm going to terminate. And we had to go into an emergency procurement in order to continue to provide that service.
That is correct.
My question is, what is the outstanding payables now for services already consumed in the department so that we don't run a risk of saying, some other vendor saying, I'm going to stop, I'm not going to provide any more service, and then we have to go into an emergency situation again in order to revive the availability of that service. So, for example, in your payment to the hospital, I know they're not going to turn anybody away, but it certainly inhibits the ability of individuals to receive service up there. For your pharmacy vendors, for your supplies, vendors and so forth. Any idea of what your outstanding obligations for services already provided that may, without a reduction in either at public health, in other programs and other divisions, or within the entire government for our benefit, that we have to come up with to make up and give you that in order to ensure that services continue?
Senator, we don't have that number. We'd have to go back and review the ledgers, of course, the accounts.
But there are outstanding obligations.
Almost definitely, Senator. There
Tens, hundreds of thousands, maybe. Well, one vendor was about 200, 300,000 until an emergency procurement, an emergency situation, so that we took it from somebody to give it to you. And I'm not objecting to that. I'm just saying that that's the reality, and that the reality of the situation too is that these reductions in funding authority levels do not resolve that issue. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Senator Pangilinan. That dispenses with all questions by the colleagues. You had a hand raised, Senator Shimizu, but you've already been entertained. But you're saying that is this a follow-up question to PT.2, Senator?
Yeah, last time, in fact, I asked for the staffing pattern of the vacancies.
Okay.
I asked about the director's position. It's not
Okay, so
included.
this-
And
okay.
I just wanted to
Sure.
So continue.
just very, if you, if I can beg the indulgence, I did ask that question. So it's not 54, it's 55 vacancies. The director is a vacancy.
Actually, it'd be 71, Senator.
Which one?
We've updated the list since, as I shared earlier, we came in on Sunday and went through the entire staffing pattern of public health and social services. So what you have at 55 or 54 is actually perhaps not the most recent copy. We just recently issued one this afternoon. So with the 70 vacant funded positions, adding on the director would be 71.
Oh, okay, so I'm looking here, still didn't have the director.
Oh, okay.
Okay, just so that, then now I'll revise it, make it 72. And then let me just ask a very quick question on that one. On the vacant funded position, all right, that you gave us here, just very quickly, educate me on number 10. You have Chief Public Health Officer, Chief Public Health Officer, Chief Public Health Officer,
Yes.
You're not implying that you have 4 Chief Public Health Officers?
No, actually, no.
Because one is very, the salary is very low.
Actually, no. What it is a cost allocated position simply provided for you so that you'll see that 80% is coming from a special fund, which is the Healthy Future Fund for that position.
So that position is vacant.
It is vacant and it's
And
cost
you've made
allocated.
the decision to keep the Chief Public Health Officer position vacant?
I'm sorry?
You made the decision to make the Chief Public Health Officer position vacant?
No, I did not make that decision. Actually, we are in the process of preparing the recruitment. These are
Okay, that's where I need to know, because I assume last Saturday,
that's correct.
before the typhoon, I understood that this was the positions that you've got all your management team together, and this is the position that you're going to keep vacant in order to meet the reduction from the governor.
Actually, no, Senator.
No?
There is another list. The list you should have is reading 460, 637. There are 17 positions listed, and as you had requested on Saturday, we went into that list and then broke them down by the types of positions and the number of people to match that position. For example, the administrative aid, there are 2 of them that we are proposing to unfund for the remainder of the fiscal year to match the 460, 637 reduction in our general fund appropriation. And we're doing this as you had asked us to further clarify the list that we had initially provided.
But ostensibly, that's really what the freezing of the position is to.
For the short list.
The
Senator,
short list.
The short
Then you-
list
So the long list of 72.
is what we would like to continue to recruit.
Okay, so this one here that you have, this is the long list, 72?
I believe so, yes. Yes, I believe if you have the one that reads April 1st.
Right, so these are all vacancies, but within
Right.
this vacancy, 72 minus whatever you had that time, 54, because the 54 matched the 460 or whatever your reduction is. So these are not vacancies, these are vacancies for recruitment.
That is correct. The
Okay.
long list is vacancies that we would like to recruit. That is correct.
Okay, so the Chief Public Health Officer, how long has that been vacant, if I may ask?
That has been vacant, Janine? I would say I would say over probably 2 to 3 years.
And who was the Chief Public Health Officer at the time?
The former Chief Public Health Officer was Mr. Peter John Camacho.
Okay, so that's been vacant for 2 years. Are you having a
Over 2 years. Over 2 years.
Over
Senator.
2
I
years.
don't have the exact date, but I've been sitting on and off for over
Right.
2 years. So
Right. So, and now you're in the process of recruiting?
yes, we are reviewing the document. Some of the positions here listed in the 70, Senator, are actually, some may be a BBMR, some may be a DOA, but you would ask for the vacant funded position. So, this is the vacant funded.
But it's been vacant funded for 2 years.
Yes.
I mean,
So we are preparing
that's,
the document for recruitment on that, Senator.
It's been vacant for 2 years, and
Over
then
2.
now you're in the process. When do you see that position being recruited?
Well, Senator, if I may refer back to a conversation we had on Saturday, Senator Gutherds had made some reference in, the recruitment process, and I had shared with the body then that, the recruitment process in Gov Guam, I think you all have heard this from other agency heads and other people testifying before you. The process is a long process. It can take anywhere from 6 to 9 months to fill a single position. So even if we shot that CPHO position out by Friday, make it be another 3-4 months before we actually have a list. There are procedures through the DOA and BBMR process that extend this recruitment process.
Right, but it's been 2 years.
Right.
So if you had done that 2 years ago, I wouldn't have been asking this question today, probably. And but there is every intention on filling that
Yes,
position.
actually,
And
the
that's
acting-
if BBMR release it, because there is an executive order again. So I just want to ask that. And then I go back down. Let me see. On the next page, line number 14, Division of Senior Citizen.
line number 14,
47, excuse me.
47. I'm sorry.
What is this Chief Human Service Administrator?
Chief Human Service Administrator is a position that is currently funded and it's under review by the Department of Administration. So
And
we're
how
waiting
long
for-
has that been?
That is, I think we're going about 2 years, and that's a position under study right now. We have another position under study, which is a program coordinator 4. We're currently recruiting, but we're asking DOA to review the requirements, or perhaps in a better way to present that is a limitation of a PC4.
Yeah,
So-
I'm just. I was just looking at that, and Art, I've been in public health, I've been in mental health,
Yes, you
I've
have,
been in the
Senator.
hospital, and all of these things. So it's kind of familiar. But a Chief Human Service Administrator or administration under the division,
That is correct.
is that the same as the administrator of senior citizen?
No, it's not.
What is it? When is this? This is a new. No?
Actually, it's an existing position title with the Government of Guam series, but it is a position that has not been cleared by the Department of Administration. It's being requested for their study.
What is the scope of this Chief Human Service
That
Administrator?
is a very question, Senator, that's being studied right now with DOA. We've requested them to compare that to the Division of Senior Citizens
No, but
Administration.
it's obviously in your budget already. I would assume that whoever put it in, they would know why they budgeted for that position.
Well, the position is under study because of the need to bring all the division heads within public health up to par.
Okay. So, Mr. Chairman, thank you very much
Yeah,
for
thank you
your
very much.
announcement. Because, the rules of engagement last Saturday that we, gentlemen and ladies agreed to is that in terms of, we're not going to try to look about reinstatement, we're going to look at cuts. So in order for me to be able to look at, not only in public health, but I see a position that I'm not too familiar with in the 35 years that I've been in the health and human services. So thank you for your indulgence,
Yeah,
Chair.
thank you very much, Senator Shimizu. And it dispenses with any and all comments and also propose amendments of Section 1A. So we are going to take a couple of minutes recess to get the folks in from DISID. Of Chapter 4, which is Department of Integrated Services for Individuals with Disabilities. I'd like to welcome to the Legislative Hall First Lady Mrs. Ada. Hello, Mrs. Roseanne Ada, and of course, maybe if you could introduce representatives from DISID as well.
To my right is our ASO, Rita Sotomayor, and our Deputy Director, Mr. Greg Calvo.
Okay, thank you very much. And with that, Senator Munya Barnes, you have the microphone.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. Hafaday and good afternoon, Mrs. Ada, Ms. Sotomayor, and Mr. Calvo. Thank you for taking the time to be with us this afternoon. Just want to ask some clarifications on the amounts that are appropriated to the department. And first thing, I guess this would be directed to the ASO. The budget for fiscal year 2007, if I'm reading correct, based on Public Law 28-150, was 2.643674. Am I right?
That's correct. 643,674. That's with the cut.
Well, the cut, if you were to take the cut, it would go down to 2.599348. Am I right?
Just its appropriation for 2007 is 3.5 million.
No, I'm talking about general fund operations.
Sorry. Okay.
Would that be it?
Yes.
Okay. Okay. I also note here, based on the public law, that that from that fiscal year operation that's allotted to you guys, the sum of $870,642 will be taken from that amount provided for the permanent injunction in civil case number CV010041JC et al. Versus the Governor of Guam. Is that correct?
That's correct, ma'am.
Okay, has that, Mrs. Ada, has the $870,642, has that already been transferred, or has that been expended? Has that been released?
Every month we make a payment to the group home, which is
To the group
Maisa.
home.
Yes.
And how much would that payroll authorization every month be?
That's about 72,000 every month.
So to date, how much is that fund up to?
You have that figure?
The full amount has been encumbered, and to date, I don't have that with me. But the full amount, Tina, has been encumbered for the contract.
Which is the 876,442. Okay, Mr. Chair, my only concern was being able to make sure that the Department of Integrated Service for Individuals with Disabilities is adhered to that funding source, and being able to look at that funding source carefully. I see that the proposal here in Chapter 4 would be to bring that funding source down from 2.643674 down to 2599348. To date, Ms. Rita Settlemeyer, it shows that the appropriation based on the AS 400 that was presented by us by the Department of Administration and BBMR was a total release of how much to date?
To date, the release is $1,980,144.
Okay. So my concern is if you've already had 85% released on the allotment and an encumbrance of 870,642, based on the budget reduction, would there be a need for you to ask for additional funding based on that breakdown? I'm asking because if you take the 2.643674, not even including the reduction of 2.599, minus the 876.42 that's encumbered, the balance remaining for operations would be at 1.773032. So my question is, how would you get the additional funding to support this permanent injunction to date if you were going to take the reduction of the 2599348?
Okay, our total ceiling for this fiscal year is $3,506,000 and 830.
Where would that 3.5 million come from at a ceiling when the public law specifically states this 2.643?
The 2.643 is what it would be if they took away what we were told they were going to decrease, which is the 44,000. The 44,000 that they 236, I believe. That's after. That would be our appropriation level after the decrease.
Actually, Senator, we will be switching some of the personnel costs over to the federal funds because we do have 100% federally funded programs that I can move some of the personnel budget over to the federal.
Mr. Chair, can I have a 30-second recess so I can just go over the numbers with DISID?
Yeah, I'll take a 30-second. We'll take a minute recess. committee of the hall is back in order. Senator Mooney Bars, you still have the
Thank
the
you.
floor.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. Again, for the sake of the Department of Integrated Services for Individuals with Disabilities and my concern on the reduction, and Mr. Chair, I understand that based on the motion that was passed over the weekend, that there would be no recommendations on amendments to restore or to delete unless it was an increase in the reduction of the budget. My concern for the committee to look is to safeguard what is due and owed by the government based on the permanent injunction that was cited in CV 010004 JC et al. Versus the Governor of Guam, which was at $870,642. I'm only concerned that based on the total appropriations and the total funding that was provided to DISIT at 2.643674, and the reduction by the proposal by the governor's office to bring it down to a 2.599 level, gives me much concern or grave concern that the additional funding that will be needed to support the Department of Integrated Services for Disabilities will be needed to operate for the remaining of the year, knowing and noting by the presentation, Mr. Chair, that was given to us not even a week ago or a week and a half ago, that the Department of Integrated Services has an allotment release of 85% to date. So, Mr. Chair, just wanting to safeguard and protect the agency and knowing that there is a concern regarding the funding there, just hoping that could be resolved.
Okay. Thank you very much, Senator Tina Mooney Barnes. Senator Judy Wanpan?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, I know that last Saturday our senior senator had made a motion to request for not just their total appropriations, but their total allotment received, and in addition, any vacant positions. I would like to ask if you have brought a copy of the vacant positions that you have within mental health. I'm sorry. Getting kind of mental here already with all these numbers. Senior moment. Do you have a copy to give to the body, or maybe? Okay, so maybe for now then. But I think since our senior senator had made that motion for all the departments and agencies who will be coming, that they do bring then copies of all vacant positions, funded vacant positions. So, and since you don't have one right now, maybe we can go ahead and proceed. I'll just ask at least some questions. How many vacancies do you have? Yes, that. Well, have you filled any of those vacant positions in your 07 starting October 1? Do those continue to remain vacant as of today?
Yes, we have filled, we're in the process of filling a counselor position. And then we have some 100% starting funded positions that were vacant that we're trying to fill.
Okay.
So
I think that is something that we would like to see, vacant positions that have not been filled, and if there's a matching or federal position 100%, please indicate that as well, so that we can go through it. So in addition, are any of those positions not filled for 2 years or more? are those repeated type vacant positions or positions that the department has been asking for year after year that you have not filled? Is there any way to indicate that too, or tell us which ones those are and how many there are there?
There was one position with the vocational rehab. The position of supervisor have not been filled for maybe 2 years, and the problem there was that there was no one available with the meeting the requirements or the qualifications of that position, and we just filled it just recently.
Oh, okay. Well, that's good then, because I was wondering whether if there aren't any, and I know the hospitals indicated that too, and there are some changes that they had requested to make as a result, so that then they'll be able to recruit. Okay. No, thank you very much, then, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, thank you very much, Senator Wampa. And again, I want to request for all agencies. Again, we had an affirmation by the Chief of Staff of the Governor, Mr. De La Rosa, that the questions, the information to be provided to the legislative body was, again, the appropriations, what was year-to-date allotment release with disbursement, as well as the staffing patterns with vacancies. And again, that was a request from the legislative body. So if you can please provide that. Okay.
I'm sorry, I forgot one question.
Please continue, then we'll get to Senator Palacios.
The $44,000 that was indicated as a reduction in your budget, what would that be a reflection of in the department in terms of how you're going to take the cuts and what the impact would be?
The 44,326 deduction or reduction in our budget, I would put some of the staffers' salary, like the program coordinator. I would put it under the 100% federally funded program that we have, which is the ADRC, which is the Aging and Disability Resource Center grant. And part of my salary will also be taken from that grant also.
So you won't be, so you're not intending then, I mean, you're going to actually take a position currently that's being filled and reduce their salaries?
No, it's not going to be a reduction in salary. It's just that when the payroll goes in, their salaries will be taken out of the grant, not from the general fund.
Oh, so that's how you're going to reduce it then. So it's not really going to then, okay.
It's not going to affect the general fund.
And it's not going to affect anyone?
No, it won't.
Personnel?
No.
Okay, thank you then.
Okay, thank you very much, Senator Wampa. Senator Adolfo Palacios on Section 2.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just to ask for a point of clarification. I have here the current budget breakdown for DSIT, which provides actually for funding from 3 sources. And the proposed cut is only on A, which is actually 2,643,674, of which, of course, the 870,642 is for the permanent injunction. But then there is also here from Healthy Futures funds, 863,156 is hereby appropriated from the Healthy Futures funds, and then from the federal matching grant in aids, 2,052,208. So I want to ask, if I add this all up, actually DSIT has a funding, total funding of $5,559,038. I have here the breakdown. Because see, the proposed cut is only from the general funds and not so in actuality, probably it's less than 2% cut from DSIT, from the total budget, including, of course, the federal matching grants and aids, which is 2,052,208. So in actuality, right now, without the adjustment, DSIT has $5,559,038. And the governor is recommending only a cut of $44,000.
That $5 million, sir, it includes the federal funds.
That's what I'm saying.
Yes.
But that's why when we deal with this budget, it doesn't really matter to us where it comes from. We just want to know the bottom line budget for that agency. So that way, when we consider the cut, it is not 44,000 is not a cut or rather the 2,600,000 is not the total budget for DSIT, but rather only half, essentially half.
I think you can safely say that.
Okay, I just want to clear that because it's not presented in the proposed cut the other two funding sources, which is the Healthy Futures Funds and the federal matching grant in aids. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. That's clarified.
Okay. Thank you very much, Senator Palacios. On Section 2, Senator Frank Blas Jr.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And thank you to the panel that's up there. Ms. Adam, I need to go back to a question that was asked earlier by one of my colleagues, actually my co-chair or vice chair with our agency, with our DSID. I'm a bit concerned, and then 44,326 is what they propose to cut from your budget. And quite honestly, I'm still not convinced with regards to whether or not you can continue to provide the services that are necessary in line with the permanent injunction that that has been laid upon DSIT, whether or not you'll be able to continue to meet those mandates. And then you stated that you were going to move one of your generally funded positions over to federally funded position. How many federally funded positions do you still have vacant?
Vacant from VR, no? From the Division of Support Services, all of the positions there are funded through the general funds, and the director's office as well. My staff, my salaries, and the deputy director and secretary. That's all under under general funds. As with VR, that's about approximately 80% federal, and 20% local matching.
Okay, that's under the VR program. Right.
DVR is the Division of Vocational Rehabilitation.
Right.
That we get about $2 million in federal funds from that for that division.
Okay. And so, how many total positions do you have, fairly funded positions that are vacant?
From VR.
We have about 5 in VR, and then we have 100% fairly funded programs such as the ADRC grant, and there's about 2 positions vacant there. And then they're trying to fill positions now under the Compact Impact, and that's about another 2 positions. So,
Okay. Are any of those positions that are vacant critical to your meeting the mandates or the orders as a result of the permanent injunction?
I would say yes, they're critical. Our problem is finding people with the qualifications that we're looking for. It's very difficult to find them. Even if we do find people that are interested in the positions, once we tell them that there's a court order, they just back out.
Okay. So, in losing the in the proposal, you stand to lose about the 44,326. And another question that I had is, and correct me if I'm wrong here, but you have already received 85% of your allotment?
From the records that I see, it's only about 75%.
Okay, 75%.
Yes, sir.
What does that amount to?
You have that figure. Yeah. We just got that this morning, Senator, from BBMR. So, Senator, remember that one?
Senators, if I may, while Rita's looking for the information, if I may add, every program every service within the Department of Integrated Services for Individuals with Disability has the potential to impact on the permanent injunction. Our director, ever since the permanent injunction had become more and more rising to the surface, that this is then taking its place alongside the Department of Mental Health and Substance Abuse, she's been looking at everything we do. Because if we provide the services and if we provide the program, it just means that there's one less consumer that moves towards litigation. So the GUMA ISA is in the forefront, of course, of the permanent injunction, but every program, it's been the policy of our director in conjunction with the Office of Community Integration and, of course, in cooperation with mental health and substance abuse, that we look at everything all across the board, that it will have the potential that it would affect the permanent injunction. So we're treating everything all across the board, that if they come in, if it's a program, if it's a service, everybody's a full court press, that everybody then do what they can to service the consumer as best as we can. So every type of service, funding, the front line is then moved towards meeting that consumer. This is why the programs that we've had in the past, like 2 years ago when we had the individualized budget thing, the Aging and Disability Resource Center, which is really a combination effort with the Division of Senior Citizens, Guam DD Council. It's so that we can then begin to combine all of our resources as we face the long-term care. So it's like everything all across the board. It's really all hands on deck, so that the entire budget, really, when you think of it, are the things that faces the permanent injunction. So we're doing the very best we can all across the board. That permanent injunction means that we address everything in the same way.
Okay, thank you. Have you found the number?
It's 75% of our release of the allotment to date, and we have 1,980,144.
So you receive 1,980,000 of the originally 2.6 million that you were allotted?
To date, that's how much has been released.
1.9.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
If I may comment on, I think, can I bring the difference on, I think Ms. Barnes was asking as far as the appropriation. The difference there, actually, the 2,643,674. Our difference on this bill is 863,156, and that's in special funds. It's not listed here.
Okay, it's not listed there.
Right, in this bill. But there is a special fund of 863,156, which is why our ceiling is 3.5 million.
Okay, let's go back to the numbers that you gave me. You said you received 75% of your allotment and your total allotment based on what was provided or with 28,150, Public Law 28,150 was 2,643,674. So am I made to understand that you've of the 2.6 million you've already received 1.9?
That's correct. Released.
Okay. Now let's do some very simple. I'm going to ask some very simple questions and just for very simple math. Okay. How much have you spent?
1,078,552.
You spent 1,078,000. Okay. How much do you owe?
How much do we owe? So far, we're just talking general fund.
Uh-huh.
All the contracts are encumbered. We owe about 3.5 million. That's how much money we've received. I don't have that total amount right now. Most of our contracts are already encumbered. We haven't spent
Okay, and part of that 3.5 also comes from federal funding?
No, that's a special fund.
Special fund.
863,156, which is not included in this ceiling amount on this bill. It's a separate, it's a special fund.
Okay. I come from a very simple household with a very simple, okay, when you owe a lot and you're only getting a little, okay, then any further reductions, I just can't see how we can continue to eat it or to bite it. So, and that's why, I'm a little wary here as far as 44,000 may not sound like a whole lot, and it may sound like you can be able to move one position to the next just so you off the general fund into a federal fund, but you can use that 44,000 to help to pay down the $3.5 million debt you got. And I'm just asking. I'm not. Okay. I just so that we can recognize where we're going to have to prioritize. I think one of the main things that we're this exercise, this whole exercise that we're going through over the last 2 weeks, was not only how to live within our means, but also how to catch up with some of the payments that we owe. Okay. So I appreciate the information that you gave me. Yeah, I mean to put you in the hot seat, and I saw your body language there, but don't worry. Thank you very much. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Senator Blas. Senator Shimizu, you're recognized.
Thank you very much. First Lady Roseanne, welcome. Greg, I'm over here. There you go. It's been a while since I've been in this seat, so just bear with me. Is the Division of Vocational Rehabilitation under DICIT? Is it a division within DICIT now by statute?
Yes, sir, it is.
It is.
It's always been under DICIT. It's just that there were designated state agency and designated state unit before. Now it's been changed to the director's office being the designated state agency now instead of a unit.
Yeah, I guess that's how long I've been away, because I remember DVR, but I didn't know about DICIT until maybe this past 8 years, I guess. But so DVR's budget is in DICIT, but it's not in this appropriation. It's not in the current budget.
DVR is under DICIT, and the current budget.
Is it in here in this amount?
Only the matching, sir, of about $355,000.
Okay, so that's on C, line C, the sum of $2,052,208 is appropriated from federal matching grants in aid to the Department of DICIT for individuals with disability. Is that the DVR?
$2,052,208. Yes, sir.
That's DVR's.
That's DVR's federal grant.
That's DVR's federal grant.
Correct.
Okay. And let me ask this question: do you have any positions 100% federally funded, not even for administrative costs, pure unadulterated federal funds?
Yes, we do under our current grant for the aging and disability. We do 100% federally funded, and under the interior funding, we do have 100%.
For the aging?
I beg your pardon, sir?
What was it, the aging?
Aging and Disability Resource Center.
Aging and Disability Resource Center. Where's this center at?
We have 20 sites out in the community, and we have a central site in our office. And we have a memorandum of agreement with the Division of Senior Citizens and with some mayors on island. That we have, it's an online service directory. We do have a website called the Guam Get Care System. It's online, and you can download that and look into all the services that's available for people with disabilities and for the aging population.
So, in other words, you have an on-site facilities, like you may go into the senior citizen centers?
Right now, there's 4 that have internet connection, and the senior citizens there can access, of course, through the staff there, the program manager, they can access the website to look for services for our senior citizens and to access the programs to streamline the access of long-term care services.
So you're talking about the services is more towards the internet aspects for the aging services
And for people with disabilities.
and for people with.
Yes, both populations.
And they're in that same site.
20 sites. We have already identified 20 sites. And you can even access the service on your own internet if
At
you have
home,
a
yeah.
computer. Yes, sir.
Yeah, maybe later on, we're in the same building. Can I just make it a request if I can get a copy of that? I'm interested in that. I'm not aware of that, and so that's something I wanted to find out. But in terms of the question that I asked, a federal position that are unadulteratedly 100% federal funds, you said you had some positions that were difficult to hire under those.
Yes, sir.
What are those positions that are difficult?
They're very specific. For example, in the area of Americans with Disabilities Act, in the different sections of the act itself, like in transportation or with the facilities, trying to make facilities accessible, or work accessibility. Those are specialized. We need to hire people that we can train, because we do have training available off island, which we have money that we can send the administrator of the compliance division to get the training and then come back and train the staff.
But what is the position that you're talking about that you have difficulty hiring?
For
Is it an
example,
FTE, one FTE that is vacant and has a recurring difficulty to hire?
For example, it's not really difficult. It's program coordinator, but the specs that we're asking is different from a regular program coordinator.
So
And-
it's a PC coordinator, program coordinator
Yes.
with a specification that complies with the grant,
Yes.
the federal funds.
And with the Americans with Disabilities.
And the Americans
yes.
with disabilities. Now, let me ask this question. Can former PCs, retirees come in and apply for that job and not be considered, since it's 100% federal funds, no local funds?
We've never received any applications.
No, but can under the terms and conditions of your grant, if it's fully federally funded, can people who may have retired as a PC who meets those qualifications, because can they come in without having to give up their government of Guam local money to be able to?
I don't know, sir, if DOA would allow that. I'm not sure about
Yeah,
that.
that's something that if it's 100% and it's because you can, depends on what your grant are, because you're having difficulties because your PC is not the same PC that's on the job classification. You're creating one, and I'm assuming that would mean it's unclassified. It's I don't know, Greg, you.
If I may, Ms. Zeta, I worked closely with Ms. Zeta on this project because when the Administration on Aging and the Centers for Medicare and Medicaid released the funding for Guam, it actually was a first of its kind. It basically combined the initiative by DICIT with the Division of Senior Citizens of Public Health and Social Services, and then the Guam Developmental Disabilities Council. And so that it brought into a focal point an opportunity to have a network for long-term care that would then not reinvent the wheel. Because we all know, Senator David, that in the healthcare area, that the same professionals service individuals for long-term care, whether or not they're Manamku or their disabilities, and of course you gradually move into a real good cooperation with the Medicaid programs. And so what has been happening is that it's been moving so rapidly that this program, which just started a year and a half ago, took what was really never before, done only on paper as a directory, which the Guam DD Council did way back in 2003 as the Managagi, which is a directory. Now, it took that as a paper directory and brought it into the internet so that everybody all across the board can instantly access that. So what's happening is that because Mrs. Zada saw the potential that you'll meet the permanent injunction whereby consumers will be empowered. Any consumer now, especially those that are in the group homes or those in mental health and substance abuse, out in the villages, the Manamku, can be able to go up and punch in a program and they be able to get from that program the same information that social workers have. So they come in and they take that information and they actually, if I'm correct, Ms. Anna, they actually reduce the time that they meet the social workers because they're already empowered with information. That was the purpose of it. So with the addressing of the permanent injunction, and that's the reason why we're tying in everything to every program, because every program that we look at the consumer-centered or consumer-directed, consumer empowerment, it just means that that's one less step as we try to address a broad spectrum, senators, as you know, all across the board of consumers that either are not getting full service, need to get up to speed because they're being underserved. And as you know, that Guam's, the 2000 census, Guam has the highest disability rate in the nation. So we're just trying to address as best we can those that come up with their needs and then begin to filter them into DISIT as a single point of entry for all these programs.
Thank you, Greg. Maybe you can also include what is the address on the computer.
Yes.
You know, to especially on the aging services and the center in that area. And you might want to look into that possibility, you know, in terms of being able to, if the federal side of the House and it's federally funds, you know, just like it's non-government of Guam funds, so it's a separate thing that you might want to look at because, you know, ultimately it's people that make those things work. Because if people don't go to the computer and don't have access to it, pwede man ang ko, eh? So let's step off and got to get Google and doing all of that and have all those computers. I kind of doubt that a little bit. So.
Good. And if I may, Senator,
and I'll do everything that I can to spread the word in that area, and then even to maybe have you guys suggest how to teach people how to.
Yes, and we thank you for that, Senator. As a matter of fact, you mentioning it, you're actually a full week ahead of the announcement that Director Ada will be doing. Last week, we just concluded the preparations for that final announcement. But if I may remind Senator Calvo, this is the second public hearing where DISIT has actually announced a new program again just through the public hearing process. And we will have those brochures, Ms. Ada, we'll have them ready for the senators.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. No other question.
Thank you, Senator Shiozu. Senator Pangilinan?
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, I want to just echo, I guess, the concern I have that the chairman of the committee has with regards to how this budget reflects the needs of the community and the services that the agency is able to provide to its clients. If I just to follow up on that, just the mathematical steps that we're taking here, if your release has been 1.9 and your ceiling is 3.5, just generally those numbers, for the first 6 months, your release has been 1.9, which gives you a remaining balance in your appropriation level of 1.5. But your expenditure rate, your burn rate of the cash or the resources is 1.9 over the first 6 months. That would leave you a shortfall of somewhere in the neighborhood of 400,000 at the end of the year if the current operating expenses continue on that pace. Yet we're reducing the budget by 44,000. So the key there, I guess, in what do we do with this shortfall for the services that you need to provide, the staff that provides those services, and the vendors that need to provide those services. We have a $400,000 shortfall at the end of the fiscal year based upon the current appropriation level. Now, one of the solutions was suggested that we would move some of the federal funded or the locally funded positions or cost allocate local positions that work with the federal positions and try to on a percentage basis, I'm sure, cost allocate those positions to the 2.05 federal funding matching programs that you have. But I'm not even sure that you could do that. Has there been any communication with the federal agencies that give you these grants that we can do those shifts in transferring the locally funded positions to the federally funded positions? And can they continue to work on the local programs while being paid from those federal funds? Because I know in the past that DISIT has had some disallowed cost, if I'm not mistaken, from those very same kind of initiatives that we've attempted in the past, but then the federal government comes back in its program audits and disallowed some of those costs. So have we made contact, or are we confident that we're not going to run into that kind of problem?
In regards to the federal grant that with the Aging and Disability Resource, I do not need to get permission to move the position from general to federal, because the program coordinator, for example, is very general, and they will be performing almost exactly the same generic services, but it's just targeted to a different population. And it doesn't affect, as long as I carry out the work plans or the contracts that I sign with the federal government, it's all right.
And what would the value of that be?
It would save the general fund some money, and we don't have to match the federal with general funds at this time. We don't have to do any matching.
But do we have any idea of what that value would be?
We have, this is the same, this is the one, right? Okay. For three positions, this is like 100% for the PC, is about $33,650, I'm sorry.
Okay.
And then for the directors, about 8%, the salary would be $6,095, and the deputy director 8%, $5,243. Total of $44,988.
Okay, but if I look at the expenditure over the first 6 months versus the remaining appropriation balance over the last 6 months, it'll be about $400,000 if we're spending at the same rate. So that $44,000 is about 10% of the shortfall. And is there a plan to supplement then the budget of the agency? Because I also understand as we try to build these initiatives that maximize the time of the contact between, let's say, the social worker and the client, to try and get them to be a little bit more efficient. But we do have, don't we have like the ratio of social worker to case or to client is such that it just is overbearing almost. I mean, is that a concern in terms of how many social workers do you have and how many clients do you have, and what's that ratio versus, let's say, a national average or a program average from those? Because my understanding is that we really have a large client to social worker case that means we're not providing the services to these clients. And that's a concern. So what we really need to do is inject more human resources in here, more social workers, to reduce the client to social worker ratio so we can provide better service to the consumer. Is there plans to do that, or is all that going to be on hold given our current budget dilemma?
We do need social workers, Senator, but we contract out the comprehensive case management program, and that takes the load off the social workers, because right now the contract calls for 110 cases that they can handle, and we contract this with Guam. So our social workers are not handling those cases.
Okay, so we can't, and that's 110
cases.
Okay, and how many cases are in the department?
Right now, we have on files 582, but actually the 3 social workers are handling about 150 cases. Some cases are active, some are inactive.
Okay, so we have, what is the cost of those 110 cases contract? And is that out of the local funds?
Yes, sir.
Okay, and the cost of that is?
Let me take a look at that. Comprehensive Case Management. Yeah. 190,824 dollars.
Are we current with the billing on that contract?
So far, we've been paying them regularly.
We've been paying them
Yes,
regular,
sir.
so there's no arrears in that contract.
As of now, I can't say, but I know we do keep, we bother DOA every week to make sure they pay them.
They pay them.
Yes, sir.
Okay. And again, if we're paying $190,000 for 110 cases, and we have 3 social workers handling 582 active and inactive, then the ratio is a little bit higher than the contracted ratio, in terms of the cost. So if we're spending let's say, the 3 social workers, the cost of the social workers are about maybe $40,000,
The salaries,
the salaries.
about that much. I'm not. I'll have to look at that.
Yes.
We have social workers 1 up to 3,
Right.
so their salaries will differ.
Mm-hmm.
And actually, they're not handling 582 cases. We did a random sampling just the last 3 months, and they're only handling about 150 cases, which is active, semi-active, and inactive. They're not handling the inactive ones.
Okay. I'm just trying to see, given that I think that the current expenditure pace versus the remaining appropriation and what that shortfall is, where can we have an opportunity to reduce the outlay in order to meet that shortfall? Because the $44,000 shortfall or cut as proposed in the budget is not going to make up for that. And so somewhere along the line, we're going to have to either at the end of the fiscal year or somewhere, do some transfers or increase the resources into those agencies. And given the current operating cost structure of the government versus the revenues that we've looked at, we're not going to have that money unless we up the revenue collections, up the revenue, somehow increase the revenue coming into the government. So the budget, as we see for this agency, I think is going to be one of the victims if we're not able to increase the revenues to support the level of services that is current there, and not even increase it as demanded by things like consent decrees, where we know that the reason why we have the consent decree is we haven't been able to meet the service levels required for these consumers. So thank you very much, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Senator Pangilinan. Senator Dario, you recognize.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. When you were testifying earlier with respect to the individuals who would be performing similar or identical functions, going from the general fund to the federal funds, you indicated they'll be serving different clientele. Would it be obviously different clientele? Is that correct?
They will be serving individuals with disabilities and aging population with chronic long-term diseases.
Is that different from what they're serving now?
Actually, we do handle senior citizens as well as individuals with disabilities in general. So,
Okay, so they would be serving the same population, so no aspect of the department's functions, or their customers per se, would suffer any loss of service or anything like that?
No, because we will be taking cases from the Division of Support Services, and we will be merging that with the other population that comes in.
So there won't be any decrease or diminished service to any of the current customers or the individuals that seek services from your agency?
No, I don't see any decrease in that.
All right. And then, Mr. Chairman, one more question. A number of government agencies, and this is something that I was talking about with a couple of the other department heads, take home vehicles after hours, and there's some indeed bona fide needs for that. Is there a need for such thing within your agency, or do you have any vehicles that are currently driven home after work?
No, we just station them at our parking lot.
Okay,
Yes.
so you wouldn't have any problem with any changes or to the law that basically limits the number of agencies or the number of vehicles that are driven home in order to try to reduce fuel then, clearly.
No one drives them home. They stay in the parking lot.
So you would not be opposed to such a measure?
I beg
To
pardon?
remove the authority for taking home the vehicle after hours to save gas, to save the wear and tear on the vehicle and other incidental costs that are associated with the vehicles being taken home?
No, we don't see it.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Senator Tenorio. Anyone else on Section 2? Okay, that would conclude then Section 2 of Chapter 4. We'll move on to Section 3. We'll take a 1-minute recess while we ask the Department of Mental Health and Substance Abuse to come to the table, please. Committee of the Whole is called to order. Thank you. We're on Section 3 of Chapter 4, Department of Mental Health and Substance Abuse, and we have with us Andy Mpinku, who's the administrator of is this Children's Services? Children's Services. Jeanette Cruz, the administrator, right? Administrative officer, okay. And Sandra Paulino, the ASO, and the I'm sorry. Andrea? Lighthizer is the acting director. Senator Frank Bloss, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And good afternoon, ladies. Thank you, and I'm sorry you have to be put in the hot seat here. Simple questions. Okay. I see here that it's proposed that the governor is proposing that the appropriation from the general fund to the Department of Mental Health and Substance Abuse for operations fiscal year 2007 is going to be reduced from $4,491,883 to $4,379,586. And if my math is correct, that's a reduction of about $112,297.
Yes.
That's correct. Okay. So, ma'am, director. Very simple question, before I line up my other ones. What are the critical and essential services that the Department of Mental Health provides to the people of Guam that may be impacted as a result of this reduction?
As far as the services we provide mental health and substance abuse treatment for the full spectrum of ages, so from children to adults, and in addition to the psychiatric care we provide. With the reduction, albeit it will be difficult for us to take that on, we would do our best so that it didn't impact direct patient care.
Okay. Have you discussed it with regards to where you're going to find $112,000 worth of reduction and not impact the services that the agency provides to the people of Guam? And I caution you this because it's a loaded question, because to your very far left, okay, is a lady that has been, left. You're right, very far right. I'm sorry, my left. To your very far right is a lady that has been constantly calling me, week after week, and has made me. I know systems of care now, up and down, back and forth, left to right, and I'm very concerned about whether or not we're going to continue or we're going to be able to provide those services that are needed. On top of, I'm sure that you've got some lawsuits that you've got to deal with.
Yes.
Okay, so how are we going to find? Where are you going to find $112,000 worth of reduction in that?
Well, in the short term, what we're doing is we're taking, again, another critical look at all our federal grants to see if there's any way that we can move any of our costs over to those grants. For example, for supplies and certain other areas.
Okay. Do you want to add on anything else from that with regards? How is that going to affect? Let me ask you a point-blank question. How's that going to affect systems of care?
My thoughts are with the decrease. We're trying everything we can to avoid impacting the systems of care.
Okay.
Because we do have other grants in the department, and our mandate is to help with children's services. So we're really trying to avoid any kind of taking anything away from the systems of care piece. But we're looking at other grants that we have that also allows us to appropriate money in other areas. So the intention isn't to in any way touch our children's services.
Okay. Now, with regards to the recent mandates from the lawsuit, how does this cost reduction, or how does this reduction in your budget going to affect that?
We're moving along piece by piece, taking a look at our programs directly in regards to the injunction. The injunction piece is going to require the creation of new services. For example, forensic unit and some of these other things that are going to require additional funding, which we're addressing in our 08 budget.
Okay. Of the, and I'm going to go back to the authorizations provided by 28-150. Of the $4,491,883 that you were authorized to receive, how much have you received so far from the general fund?
About 80%. We received 80%.
80% of your
General fund.
of the 4.4.
Of the 509,188.
50918.
Yes, Senator. Because it doesn't include the 600,000.
Okay, that's so you're counting everything. Your operations costs, your child mental health initiative program grant fund, and your youth drug and alcohol program.
And the nonprofit organization.
Okay.
They have 600,000 for the nonprofits.
Yeah. Huh. Okay, so you received. Repeat that again. How much have you received of you? Okay, for 5.09. Is that what you're saying?
5091883. $5,091,883
Mm-hmm.
is what we have received.
That's what you've received so far.
Yeah, that's a total appropriation.
Okay, how much of that have you received?
80%. We received $4,071,718.66.
So you received about 4.71 million.
Yes, sir. Yes.
Okay, and then of the. So if you do some quick subtraction on this thing, that means then that you're still owed close to 350,000. Am I reading that right?
Yes.
You've received 80%, or you received the authorization to spend 80%?
The authorization.
You received the authorization to, okay. You received the allotment. So that leaves you with roughly about $350,000. Subtracting
Because if we subtract it, it's $1,020,164.34. If we subtract the 4 from the 5.
Because he says 4.7, it's actually 407.
Oh, okay.
He thinks it's 4.7.
Is it is it 5.091 or is it 5.9?
It's 5,091,000.
Okay, so 5,091,000. Let's just stick with that. 5,091,000. You've already received the authority or the authorization to spend 4.7 million.
4,071.
Oh, 4.07. Okay. And so that leaves you with about about $1.01 million, right?
Yes.
Left for the next remaining 5 months.
Yes.
And you're going to subtract $112,297 from that.
Yes.
And that would leave you with
Let's see, about 908,000.
quick math, about 900, and yeah, I'll go with that.
Yes.
And you'll be able to live, to be able to function the rest of the year with all your, how many with all the programs that you've got?
Yes.
With that. Okay, with the 4.07 million that you've been authorized, how much have you received?
We've actually received different. He's at the actual allotment. They want to know exactly how much we've received.
We've expended about 52%
Of the 4.
total
Yeah.
allotment.
50, you expended about 52% of the total allotment.
Actual expenditures come out to about 2.6 million,
Uh-huh,
and we've encumbered about 816,000.
okay.
So it comes out to about $3.4 million of expenditures and encumbrances, and that's about 68% of total released, not total appropriation, total authorization.
Okay. Now, recognizing that you've already spent about 52%, and that's, you spent about 52% in the halfway point of the fiscal year, right?
Yes.
And so 52% halfway point of the fiscal year. Simple math, 52 plus 52 is 104, 104%, right?
Yes.
And then you're asked to be cut by 112,000. My concern is, are you going to get to the end of the fiscal year and not owe anybody or live within your means with that $112,000 cut? Again, simple, rudimentary math, and it goes back to what are those critical and essential services that you provide as a department that are going to be impacted by a reduction in your above $112,000. And I know now it sounds like a harder question to answer than when I initially posed it. Okay, and Mr. Chair, if you allow, after the line of questioning, give it some thought process with it. I can come back to that question later on.
Come back to you, Senator Bluss.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you, Senator Wombat. Do you recognize?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The chairman of this particular committee has asked several times, how are you going to be impacted? And I'll be honest with you, I've not actually heard anything concrete. To quote you, you basically said that you're going to work real hard to make sure it doesn't impact on direct patient care, but we still didn't hear specifically how that's going to happen. You've indicated that you're going to try to avoid affecting system care, so that's the second. Then the third will be student services. But then any of the injunctions that requires any new services is not going to be addressed until 2008. So I still would like to know a little more detail to specifically how you're going to specifically address the 112 reduction. And so, and I'll give you an example because other agencies have done this. Is like, for example, Public Health came up and said that based on the dollar amount of reduction, they're not going to fill 17 positions, funded positions. So, I think that's what we like to know, is to get a feel of what the impact is going to be like. So what are some of the things, and I'm sure you must have discussed this with your staff, so can we hear from you then, other than, you're going to make sure, because it's very general and it doesn't give us any comfort at all in knowing then what the specifics are.
Yes. what we've done is I've looked together with GMH, Guam Memorial Hospital, and we've looked at the costs. For example, we share some common costs. For example, medication. If we move our medications to GMH, in which they have agreed, we'll actually have a savings by them ordering the meds for us and then dispensing. So we'll actually have a cost-cutting safe there.
So can you give us a dollar figure for that?
They're looking about maybe a 20% decrease. The other piece too is we also have a contract with G4, which is $174,000 a year. It's for security services. By combining with GMH, we can also decrease that. So that would be $174,000 savings there. The other part too is with that we also again taking a look at other services that we combine. For example, our meals that we serve our patients in the AIU. GMH has also agreed to provide for us an additional savings. So we're able to cut back on some of the operational costs without actually impacting direct patient care. And we're also looking at our federal grants. We've applied for 2 more grants to help us with the injunction that specifically address JCO and also our forensic unit. So we've looked to federal funds and applied to those in the hopes that they will help us fund that as well.
But you haven't heard from them then?
No, we haven't heard from them. But to just address that $112,000 cost, it's going to take some maneuvering on our part. But I'm confident we'll be able to decrease our budget by that amount.
What is the dollar amount for the injunctions, the federal grants that you're writing for and hoping to get that's going to meet then the 112?
The forensic unit grant is a $2.2 million grant for the forensic unit piece that they've asked us to bring on board. The other part is a JCO, that's a planning grant. It's an $800,000 planning grant that we're also have, our planner has worked to.
Now those are real large amounts, and they've exceeded, of course, the 112. So what portions of these, and how soon will you hear? And will it be, before the end of the fiscal year?
These things will be addressed in the next fiscal year. That's what the grant is.
No, but I mean, I thought you were trying to get the grants this year.
Yes. But the funding wouldn't be released until I believe it's September of this year.
So how then are you going to make up then for?
But for the 112, the MOUs with GMH would address for this year's shortfall.
Oh, just all the MOUs that you're going to have with GMH. Yeah. GMH will take care of it.
That will take care of the 112. I was just addressing that your concerns for the future about what are we doing to be proactive.
Okay. Now, I mean, I know GMH is next, but I'm just wondering now how they're going to be effective with all these MOUs, since they're going to take care of all these. It's not going to, when you're workings with them, on the agreements you have with them, is not going to somehow hamper and have them it cost more for them by having to handle and having mental health get the savings.
I don't think it will, ma'am, simply because what it's doing is they're just getting a discount. For example, the meds, they're just getting a discount for ordering in volume. And then for the meal piece, by helping us do that, again, it's just a discount in size. We're not going to have any direct cost to them. The same thing with the security. The security is already through GMH. They have the same company, but by awarding a larger contract with mental health, then they actually will get a reduction in rate. And so that's how we're saving. It's a substantial savings.
Okay, now the dollar amount that was actually the chairman was talking about for your agency are just the $600,000 of the general fund and the $4.4 million. It does not include, of course, the others that come from the Healthy Futures Fund. Have you received the Healthy Futures Fund? Is that part of your total allotment?
Yeah, the Healthy Futures Fund, according to our figures, is we've received 66% of that appropriation.
Okay, so 66. Okay, that's it. Thank you very much.
Yes.
Thank you, Senator Wampet. Senator Shimizu, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Buenas. Nice to see all of you here. When we started this process, there were basically 3 things that most of our colleagues, if not all, put a priorities, and that's health. Because health is your wealth, right? Both physical health and your mental health. And the other one is, of course, education. And then the third one will be in the areas of health and public safety. So mental health in and of itself kind of embraces all of that. And the fourth one that I really look at it now, because of the rules of engagement in this process, is that that we were given to look at is we're going to look at not trying to restore. You know, if you guys were watching TV earlier, so, you know, gentlemen and ladies agreement that it's really to look in terms of keep the cuts 2.5, I think, percent of the total appropriation. And yours came up to about $112,000, something, to 297, right? And the good minority leader had asked, you know, for a very specific strategic spending plan. And incidentally, you have a very good ASO. I understand she just came up to mental health. And so I've known Sandy for a long time, and I've seen her work as an ASO. So she will be very, very helpful in terms of looking at areas where cost containment can be occur without having so much impact in terms of direct services, whereby cost shifting may be able to be looked at to continue the quality of services. And I understand there is also a court order or
Yes, a federal permanent injunction.
Federal permanent injunction. Can you just tell me just a little bit of that?
Yeah, the federal permanent injunction is the result of a lawsuit with the plaintiff represented by Guam Legal Services and the governor and DISIT and myself for mental health. And according to the injunction, my predecessor, Pete Roberta and Mrs. Ada, they entered into an agreement about certain things that we are going to press forward to improve mental health care and care for disabilities on island. One of those things is JACO, and JACO is an accreditation body, and JACO stands for Joint Commission of Accredited Healthcare Organizations. So that's one thing that we've agreed to. The other part, too, was to...
Let's stop right there. You've agreed to pursue
JACO.
seeking accreditation.
Yes.
And there's cost to that.
Yes.
Have you already enumerated the costs?
Yeah, we were addressing those
So
more...
you said earlier something 800,000? I thought I saw some, 800,000 for JACO. Close to $1 million.
Yes, yeah, the grant itself, the JACO planning grant, it awards $800,000, but JACO accreditation for the departments is going to run in excess of $800,000 because it's going to include the increase of programming, different types of program that we haven't had yet available in the two departments.
So right now, where are you going to get this 800,000 planning grant?
The $800,000 planning grant is through GURA. It's through GURA and I forget the other agency. I don't have my planner here today.
So GURA is going to underwrite through their community block grant. Is that where it's coming from?
Yeah, GURA has GURA is doing the forensic piece, the forensic part for the forensic services, and it's not GURA for the JACO grant. I'll have to get more information on that part.
See, because those are not in here in terms of, my good chair on the health committee. Those are not in here. We're only looking at one aspect of the 2.5. Yes. We're not looking at the collective monies that will be coming through. And like I said, now that you have Sandy and somebody, you'll be more aggressive in trying to find more new money to maybe offset the 2.5. That's something that I wanted to hear. You know, if the governor cuts $112,000, where am I going to not only cut services to a very vulnerable group, but where can I try to find new money to start bringing in? And if you're getting some monies from GURA for the forensic side, where is that? I'll commend you for that. I mean, that is right on target. Just don't, curse the darkness that I'm going to lose 112, and maybe give those kinds of specific, like a stand-up, specific ways of making up the shortfall. And so you have some of those with GURA. That's what did I put on my note? $2.2 million?
Yes. That is for the forensic, because another part of the injunction is.
Is that for CIP 2.2? Is it for medication? Is it for what is the grant going to be?
Part of the grant is for the actual building of a forensic unit, because currently we're going to need a minimum, a medium, and a maximum security forensic unit.
Of course,
and there's certain building things that go into that.
Right. So when is that already been consummated? Is there a handshake, or is there a notice of grant award that we have on hand?
No, that hasn't actually been. We've been working very closely with GURA because they're the ones who brought us the attention about that grant. But we also have secondary plans in place in the event something happens to that grant. Like if we're not awarded that grant, we have a secondary plan so as to not incur too much additional cost. And some of that includes, and we've been working on, is the renovation of our third floor in the department.
Okay, so you're looking in terms of new CIPs to develop a new forensic unit, maybe for the criminally.
The not guilty by reason and sanity.
Right.
It's currently in DOC.
Right, and so that's where you have them up there. So you want to bring them back more to a more appropriate mental health environment, and that's what do you see in the crystal ball in terms of the timeline?
We're really pressing forward to have that up by August. That we have to have those people out of DOC by August, and we're trying to implement the programming concurrently in that same place. But we have already committed ourselves, the department, to that August 31st timeframe.
Yeah, because that also spreads your staff out, right? You've got psychiatric technicians, psychiatric social work. You service them out there off-site, off-campus, and that also.
Right. We can bring them back into the department.
And so that you will be able to have at least some cost saving in that regard, in that setting. So you're looking at sometime in August for but as to when it will start, the forensic unit?
Yeah.
But when does the paperwork in terms of like the award between the contract between, is there a real commitment?
Yeah, the actual awarding should be within the next 8 weeks.
Within the next 8 weeks. So they're still working on the grant. You've already put the grant application in?
Yes.
Okay. When did you put the grant application?
It was actually due last week.
It was due, so it's in last week already. That's interesting. Could I have a copy of that, just for my FYI down the road?
Yeah, I'll get it from our planner.
Yeah, just not a long thing, just a short synopsis of it and so forth.
Sure.
And then the 800,000 for the planning grant. Where did you say that's coming from?
I'll get with Simeon for the actual location of the. I'll get with Simeon for that.
Yeah. So we're looking about 2.8 additional monies that will be coming into. And does that the 2.2 on the forensic?
It's 2.2 for the forensics, and then we have 800,000 on the planning grant.
And that includes collateral equipments that's going to come in with the renovation?
Yes.
Okay, so just wanted to let our good show of health that there's a $3 million, quite frankly, of additional funds coming in.
Yes.
And 800,000, you find who is going to underwrite that cost, right? So that you won't have to be using your limited general fund.
Yes.
Will that 800,000 have new FTEs, new positions that would just deal with the?
I think it's the grants function is primarily to start a JACO compliance team, because normally what happens in a hospital or a health organization is they have a compliant team that ensures that an organization is moving towards JACO. So that's part of it, is the development of that team.
Right, but would that include new FTEs?
It probably would, because we have, I know GMH has those FTEs, but mental health doesn't actually have that written in for us.
What I was saying is that you have, so that might be new FTEs for planning purposes, either that or you can contract some of the planning aspects out.
Yes,
we do have a Bureau of Planning.
Yes, we could also outsource that.
I think that's in the governor's office area, right? Maybe we can tap them, so that anywhere we can use existing services so there'll be no duplication. We have a Bureau of Planning, let's use them, and also have your in-house team in that area. Now, you mentioned earlier about some of your cost savings.
Yes.
And you're talking about joint purchasing of medication. Do you already have the formulary as to,
Yes, I've already submitted the formulary to Peter John.
and they're going to be able to add on without adding all the administrative costs
Yes.
to that area? Because I do know one thing, that when you get your medications at the hospital, it's much more expensive than if I went and got it down at Payless,
Oh, yes.
because of all of the attending facilities in that area. So you might, you're saying like about 20% discount?
Yeah, because we're the on Guam, we order the full line of formula for psychotropic medication.
Sure.
Because GMH doesn't normally order those meds because they're specific to mental health diagnosis, and so by adding on our chunk of meds to the amount of meds they already order, they can actually get a discount.
Okay, and do you have to pay up front?
Yes, we have to pay up front.
And where would you get that amount? How much would that cost for annual stockpiling of different types of psychotropic drugs?
Well, medication is one of our larger costs per year. Our children medication alone is about $80,000 a month. But however, we got a $400,000 from Compact Impact funds to supplement our medications. So that
you have how much was that again?
We had $400,000 total of Compact Impact, of which we got $200,000, and the remaining $200,000 is to be released to us.
Compact Impact. 400,000 is. Do you get that annually?
Yes, typically we'd have that. We got that last year, and we got this year as well.
Oh, okay. Is there any other funds that you get outside of the general fund? You have, like I said, the grants, which is great that you're going to get from the federal side. The 800,000, we're not sure yet. Now you got 400, and then of course what I see here in the law, when it was passed. Of course, I wasn't here at that time, but you have different types of funding from the Healthy Future funds and so forth. But it doesn't show all the other funds. So maybe you can just provide me a copy of all your funding. Yes. Wherever it comes from Tinsuli to whatever, Mona na Malum, I like to look at that category. It's because I want to really, like I said earlier, health, education, and public safety. Those three things, okay? And it's very true. Health is your wealth.
Yes.
And you have mental health has been spanked right now, and I think one of the concerns would be, if I'm to deliberate under the rules of engagement that the chair put on us to cut further, I want to try to look at all the other stuff so I can feel a little bit more comfortable that the cut is not cutting at the jugular vein. And we're going to start having problems, especially with the legal problems that you might have to be incurred. Have you spoken to the Guam legal people about your budget being cut by the governor? And how would that impact on your commitment to?
No, Senator, because we're currently under litigation. So we're told that only the attorneys can talk to each other.
Yeah, tell your attorney to talk to that attorney.
Right, I'm not aware.
Just tell your attorney, say, attorney, go talk to their attorney, that the governor of Guam is cutting our budget by 112, and we want to be careful about that. No, attorneys to attorneys, you can't go directly to them, of course, but I would suggest that, because I would be very, very interested in finding out and not necessarily having to read about it later on, that, we, cost a little bit more harm legalistically to the department that I care so much. And so that's a suggestion, and I'll leave that with you, but I think that's something that I would want to look at in terms of how this deals with the legal agreements that you put. What are the other things that you guys agreed to? The JCO is one.
Yeah, JCO is one of them. There's four other stipulations. One is to implement a policy and procedure for grievance proceedings, but that would also fall under JCO if you're JCO accredited. The other one, too, is to complete 200 multidisciplinary treatment team meetings, of which...
to complete what?
200 multidisciplinary treatment team meetings. We had an
So you almost have like a daily meeting.
Yeah, well, we currently have that now, but they wanted our most high interest cases to be looked at by an independent consultant, and so we brought them on board, and they finished the 200, and then we're meeting locally, and we've accepted those recommendations. But the reason why we had those was to inform about what services do we need, what further programming, and so that was the other piece of the injunction, was those 200 MDTTs. The other part was to create a waiting list with a placement review team to ensure that people who needed services that were being created or being implemented, that we make sure that there's an expedient process of people moving along on that wait list.
Right, so they just don't be put in the pass on file kind of thing and just stays there, and they don't get. So, when do you think you're ever going to get out of this?
We're making strides every day towards that. The reality for JCO accreditation, even with the look of our the consultants, we're looking about a 3 to 5 year long process that it would take 3 to 5 years for both mental health and DISID to be fully JCO accredited.
Okay, but in the meantime, none of this 112 that the governor is taking away from your department, knowing full well that you have some legal obligations to attend to, and if you don't, it can be much more costly than the $112,000. It might be a penny wise and a pound foolish to do that. I just don't want that. At this point in time, I agree to the rules of engagement in terms of cut, wherever it goes, but that's something that you really need to look at so that it doesn't come back. And then you say, well, it's the legislature who cut me, and for the record, we didn't. It's being put in here, and I want to make sure that the agencies are free to speak out, especially when it comes to health, safety, and education, especially those three things. The fourth one is the revenue enhancement, and I think you're doing a great job in that and trying to go get money from the federal government to build a new facility. Very quickly, did you have any lapse funds in 2006?
Any lapse funds?
Either money they didn't send to you, release, or whatever. At the end of the year, you close your books and you say, I have surpluses, which are lapses, or I broke even, or guess what, I spent more than what I... And you have also, I guess the governor had transfers authority at that time, and you can... So, I don't know what your...
According to our ASO, no, we didn't have any lapse funds.
None at all.
None.
Okay, so... And your budget is kind of status quo from last year to 07?
No, I think it was increased by $1 million.
Increased by $1 million. So, and is that because you needed new programs, or is that you saw already in 2006 you didn't use that $1 million, but in 2007 you're asking for more. Right. Is it growth in the programs, or fines to the programs, or cost of legal representation?
Part of it's personnel, but the other part too is we had the establishment of our Laddie Treatment Center.
Your what?
Laddie Treatment Center, which is it's a residential treatment center for children.
And that was in 06?
Yeah, it started, yes, in 06.
When in 06?
I believe it was April is when the contract started.
So with that new program that you started, was it funded by anybody at the beginning of the fiscal year?
Yeah.
The reason why I asked that because you said you got zero lapses and you got a new program.
It was partially federally funded.
Okay.
And then the other part was local appropriation.
So you still have some of that federal funds for following through for next year. And you had zero lapses. And with this cut, you probably have less lapses. I mean, less than zero lapses. We have a minus in the numericals of things. You got -1, -2 from the zero. And looking at that, and so vacancies. Do you have copies of all of your vacancies? Both federal and local?
We can provide that to you, but we don't.
Yeah, can you provide it to the good chair, and then they can provide it to because I think we gave this at least the senior senator had requested that, plus also your allotment. You also get money, and again, I beg your indulgence. I'm fairly. This is just my third month after being away for over a decade. You have the also additional local funds. Healthy Future Funds, that's not being touched, right?
Yeah, it is being spent.
No, but I mean, it's not being reduced.
Oh, no, it's not.
No,
being
that amount is intact.
Yes.
No reduction in that. And then also your youth drug and alcohol program, that is again not touched.
No, we're not touching that.
And then the sum of 600,000 from the general fund for outsourcing of services. Again, that's not being
No, we're not touching that.
not being touched. And so, after discussing all of these things, the recommended cut by the governor, you will be able to live with that cut and not adversely impact any legal agreements or consents that the department has represented, your predecessor, and any of the services that we are looking at.
Yes.
Okay. Now, vendor payments. Are all of your, you didn't have any lapses on 2006, so I'm assuming you're paying. Do you have any outstanding accounts, 30 days, 60 days, 90 days?
Yes.
And how can you give us at least a breakdown, maybe not now, but the aging of your accounts? Because if you paid all of that at 2006, you may not have lapses, you might have, lapses less than that.
Yes.
So I think that will be important to look at, to see. And are some of those having to do with the security contract that you have? Because you're making a decision not to cancel that contract and piggyback on GMH's
Yes.
security, and GMH is not going to charge you for that?
Well, actually, they'll get a reduction. They'll get a reduction in the rate. We'll get a substantial reduction. So there'll be some cost, but it won't be the full cost that we typically pay.
So you're going to negotiate with GMH for their security to come down. And what is your projected cost of that?
Well, currently we pay $174,000, and so we want to bring it down by at least $100,000.
What kind of services do you get for $174,000?
Well, basically what they do right now is they have one guard per shift on our second floor.
One guard per shift on your second floor. Have you done a cost analysis that if you did your own in-house versus that, will you be paying $171,000 for 365 days?
Right. I know in the past they tried to allocate the duty to the safety officer, but there were some legal ramifications of that. But that's something that we probably should consider.
Yeah. So you're looking at that too. I mean, I'm just saying any stone unturned, and then you also may look at the classification, because there may be some of those that will authorize you just cherry pick it, bring it back in, pay at that rate. And if it really does save you cost, because the same people can also be part of the total care, not just only to protect the infrastructures, but also things that happen from within.
We were thinking too with the forensic unit, because they'll need security. We're going to try to piggyback off of them. That would be another option.
Right, and that can be an in-house kind of things that you're looking at, and so very, very good, very good. I'm impressed that you're looking at trying to reduce some of the costing, but the sacred parts are where it deals with direct care with our consumers of mental. And again, if you have those information later on, somebody can drop it over. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Senator Shimizu. Senator Mooney Barnes.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you to all the panel members here before us this afternoon. I can appreciate the concern and the protection that my colleague from In Iran spoke about, and just talking about the programs or some of the court orders that you guys have to abide with. Maybe you can share with me something that comes to mind, and wanting to know where we're at with this is, you talked about that 200 disciplinary... multidisciplinary. Is that part of the community integration plan that was ordered a couple of years ago?
That's part of the piece.
Because I guess my question to this is, based on that court order, I know that there was a deadline that was due July 1st, 2006, and then I guess the director before you had asked for an extension for another deadline for November 606, right?
Okay, yes.
Where are we at today, and is there any additional funding that's needed if it's not completed? If it is completed, how can we get copies of that, and where has that been channeled through?
We can give you copies of that piece. The first piece of the plan was Silver Lake took a look at us from a JACO perspective,
Right.
and they published a report that is made available publicly to our consumers and to everyone. It's also on our website, the PEACE website. So that was available. The other piece was the multidisciplinary treatment teams is broken down into 4 visits by off-island experts, and they did 50 each time, and so we've completed all that. The final payment for that was rendered 2 weeks ago at the amount of $156,000. So we are paid in full. We have received 100 of those 200 evaluations, and what happens is we get the report with the recommendations from the off-island experts. We then sit down with the consumer, their guardian or their parent, and the professionals at mental health, and we meet locally with them and we talk about the recommendations, and we ask them their thoughts about accepting those recommendations. So we've done that for the first 100, and we've created a waiting list and discussed the programming piece. So
How can we get a copy of that? Can we?
Let's see. Well, it's patient care information. I'm trying to think about how it would be best to release. We can't really actually release the reports themselves because they're patient specific.
The summary of that?
The summary of that
Based on the
is
assessment?
supposed to be released publicly at some point. We'll talk about the programming that needs to be done,
that
and that
needs to
should
be done. If that's already been completed, how soon can we get a copy of that?
The Silver Lake team says that they'll have the additional 100 reports to us by the end of May, and then with the
May 07.
May 07 with the comprehensive piece. So I'm looking probably about the June timeframe is when
June
that report
timeframe?
should be available.
Okay, so when you say the 156,000, so we owe no more to that.
That's correct.
Right. So everything has been.
We're paid in full.
We're paid in full. Okay. Thank you very much. Also, I was looking over again Section 3 of the public law, and it specifically states of that youth and drug and alcohol program, which is at 153,144. It's stated there that on the 15th day of each month, the Director of Mental Health and Substance Abuse shall provide a detailed report to the Speaker on the expenditures made against the appropriations in the subsection and post the same on the department's website. Has that been done to date?
Yes.
Okay, so can we get a copy of that also?
Yes.
And that can be
Yes.
provided to
Yeah,
us?
we can get a hard copy to the Speaker. But
And as stated earlier to Senator Shimizu, you said these programs, the Child Mental Health Initiative Program Grant, the Youth Drug and Alcohol Program Grant, and the 600,000 appropriation from the general fund, none of those appropriations will be touched.
That's correct.
So based on the cut of the 112,297, those cuts will be basically for operations?
Yes, ma'am.
And you can live within that means?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Okay. Thank you very much, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Senator Barnes. Senator Palacios?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I think the two speakers previous just preceding myself thoughts on some of this. But I'm looking at the total budget for the mental health and substance abuse, and in actuality, including special funds, it's actually $6,964,989. That the proposed cut is actually a cut from the general funds appropriation, which is actually the local funding, which is actually the money that we need to cut. All the other programs, funding, remain intact. 1,469,962 from the, of course, Healthy Futures Funds, and another 250,000 from the Healthy Futures Fund, 153,144 from the Healthy Futures Funds, and then again the 600,000 actually is from the general funds, which is to outsource some service. And those are not touched. I just want to clear that. And in actuality, taking the whole total for the mental health and substance abuse, it's actually a 1.6% reduction if you look at the entire budget. What is being proposed, the 112,297 represents only 1.6% reduction of the whole total budget. And I just wanna point that out, that when we deal with budget, we have to take into consideration the entire sources of funding to see how, in order really to estimate how the agency is going to operate. I want to ask you one last question. On all these federal fundings, these are to run programs and whatever. I think that, wouldn't you agree with me when if I say that some of this funding, I guess, would pay for operations, such as, let's say, for example, for the Child Mental Health Initiative Program grant, that is actually, the administrator of that grant, would there be some money from that to pay for the operation or the administration of that program?
Yes, typically it's 10% of a grant is allocated for administrative costs.
So there's operational, the application, or rather some money of that would be applied to the operation.
Yes.
Okay. And likewise for the youth drug and alcohol program, which is 153,000, somebody again has to administer that. So there's still, I guess, money that can be applied for operation.
Yes.
That's all, Mr. Chairman. Thank you.
Thank you. Senator Guthertz?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, colleagues, and ladies from Department of Mental Health and Substance Abuse, Mr. De La Rosa. Ms. Mpinko, right? Am I correct? Ms. Mpinko, okay. Who is the acting director right now?
Right here. Dr. Lighthizer, right here.
Well, I sure hope that you become the permanent director. John, you might transmit to the governor that you have someone here that seems to be very well versed with the operations of the department and is providing us with excellent information. And that's a tribute to the team here. And it's really very refreshing and it's very commendable. Now, I have one question for you folks, and then I have some observations. My question is, because I have heard that there are people that are turned away at mental health who have drug problems, who seek treatment but cannot be accommodated because you're so overloaded with clients. Is that the case?
I can only speak to our current figures. I haven't heard anything. Anytime, if I've ever that brought to my attention, I would like to know, who specifically that is. We don't have a waiting list in our drug and alcohol. We're very proactive in assuring that. We haven't, to my knowledge, we haven't turned anyone away for drug and alcohol treatment.
Good.
That wasn't willing to receive treatment. Of course, there are people there who might be brought in against their will and they don't really want treatment, but it's not because we've turned it down. I'm not sure if those are specific cases.
Good. Well, that's good to know, and I'm very happy to hear that because in many cases there's very few options for folks in those situations, and it's important to find a way to accommodate those in need, and I'm very pleased that you've been able to do that. Now, just some observations, and maybe the chairman can clarify for me, because I'm still new at this. And it's not specific to your agency. It's with reference to the bill, Mr. Chairman. We sort of sat here all afternoon, and we're going through the bill as it is laid out by the governor, government instrumentality by government instrumentality. And the governor has proposed cuts for just about every agency or department that he has some kind of oversight of. and we're looking at all the proposed cuts, and we're adding and we're subtracting, and we're deciding whether or not it's justified and whether or not the agency can live with it or not. And in almost all cases so far, except for the judiciary and for the $29,000 for the Guam Public Library System, I think almost every senator here has not really found a significant reason not to support the cut or the proposed cuts. So my question is really, do we have to go through this? Remember, I'm new at this. Do we really have to go through this agency by agency? Can we not just accept the proposed cuts that the governor is offering and then move on to another critical part of this whole exercise?
The committee of the whole is designed to engender discussion between all the members on the specific proposal that's before you, whether budgetary, and if there are no questions and the desire of the body is to expediently go through section by section and move on to those sections that you desire to go through, then that's the prerogative of the body. The members have the opportunity to ask questions as they see fit, as you've asked questions before. So that is the normal course of the committee of the whole.
It seems to me that even before these agencies have come here, there's been some sort of meeting of the minds with the governor on these cuts. Maybe there was some consultation before with the governor's representatives that this is how we'd like to cut your agency. Can you live with that? You'll have to adjust yourself to live with that. So there's already been some screening, some gatekeeping on the part of the executive branch before this bill has even gotten to us. So I'm just curious about how my colleagues feel about this process. If it would not be more expedient simply to go through each section, say objection, no objection, objection, no objection, to get to the end result. Because we're taking time from these officials, from their departments and agencies, and I know they're willing to come here and they're willing to answer our questions, which is very, very good. The information is very good. But the end result may end up being the same. I mean, why do we have to go through this exercise? Why can't we just move quickly and do what needs to be done instead of going through this long, extended process? It probably will take 5 or 6 more days at the rate we're going. I make a motion, Mr. Chairman, that we accept the governor's cuts, except at the end if someone wishes to challenge a proposed cut. That's my motion.
Okay.
We don't need any, what did you say, Mr. Speaker?
It's there. They're already, the only thing that if the desire of any member is to change it anyway, then you may change. So, but
that would be my motion, Mr. Chairman.
We'll go.
Let's just accept the proposed cuts, unless any member would like to challenge any proposed cut.
Okay, Senator Respicio.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. I think that's a very prudent request that the good senator is making, because when you factor out the 2.5% cuts across the board, well, not really across the board because of some exemptions made for the judiciary as well as KGTF, this entire exercise would only yield roughly $2.8 million in a reduced spending authority, which will still leave this legislature of trying to find $20.8 million additional worth of revenue to bridge what we need to get through for the next 6 months. So I support that motion. I want to say I'm very impressed with DISIT's presentation. And I think that the legislature is focusing too much on what needs to be cut. We need to start focusing on what programs we need to keep. And that could be a basis by which we can do this exercise. But calling in the agency by agency, when in the case of DISIT, I'm sure they were already told that your cut was going to be 2.5% and that you'd have to figure it out. And you've obviously made wise decisions on how you can alleviate this 2.5% to your agency. But, the bigger problem here, Mr. Chairman, is how are we going to bridge $20.8 million from now until the end of the fiscal year, which is required based on the current spending authority that we have in the revenue estimate that was adopted by the legislature. So I support that amendment so we could get down to the real critical areas of this whole budget process and not this semantics and dog and pony show where I know the folks at DISIT have not, DISIT Mental Health have a lot of work at your agency, and certainly your time can be better spent than coming in here and talking about a 2.5% cut where the problem is much larger than what we're exposing our people of Guam to. So I support that amendment. Thank you. I'm sorry. I was still on DISIT. I was running some numbers, but it's mental health. I'm so impressed with your presentation.
Senator Juan Pat.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, I support the amendment because we basically know that everyone who's been here have said that they can all live within the cuts, and they have gotten their marching orders, and that's basically it. There's really basically nothing that we can do other than to say we want to increase it. But I do have a question, though, and I don't know if you're going to be able to answer this, because an amendment, this body has made a motion to, in one particular agency or department, is to bring it back to its original allotment appropriation. And so how is this amendment or this motion is going to affect that? So that would it mean then that everything, regardless of the action that we've taken last week, that one particular,
as I understand
which
the
is
motion
the library.
As I understand the motion, the motion is to
judiciary, you're right,
accept
and the library.
all amendments that have currently been made already are intact.
Okay.
And mistake. Correct me if I'm wrong, but the motion is to accept the remainder of the bill in its existing form as it was presented by the governor.
Yeah, except for one caveat, and that is at the end, if there's any member of this body that feels strongly about it, that they can make a motion to restore a cut at the end of the decision making here.
All right, Senator Calvo.
Yeah, on the motion to accept all. I'm sorry, I left the gallery. So there's been a motion to accept all proposals put forth by the governor in terms of deappropriation henceforth. If I can,
Senator Gutherts.
I can. If the mover of the amendment can yield. Just excuse me. Can you repeat what the?
Thank you. Yeah. Well, what I was trying to do, Senator Calvo, is because all afternoon we've been going through this, and everyone pretty much says we can live with it.
Yeah.
And I'm sure there's been some discussions previous to this by the departments and the governor's representatives, where they have thought out this carefully and came up with these numbers. Mm-hmm. So I would suggest, in order to move quicker, that we just agree that we will accept the cuts, except if any member of this body at the end of the process, perhaps before we get into the expenditure side, wishes to make a motion to restore a particular cut, that they have the option to do that. Yeah. We accept all others except those that we wish to restore.
Actually, my feeling and why I'm concerned on this particular amendment is there have been some very good questions that have come about as a result. I know it may seem long and tedious, but if you can recall just earlier in regards to let's say an agency such as public health, where again it was made note that we had about 53 vacancies, and with these vacancies, obviously we found out there's been a filling of at least one position, but then there was an ability for the body to get a good concept and idea of these particular agencies, what their priorities are. We obviously know that, let's say with public health, they can live with it with this particular cut, but we also now, it's been discovered that there's about $2.5 million in appropriation that was ratified in Public Law 28-150, that there are no individuals working with that agency that had this particular appropriation to back them up. I'm concerned about this amendment. I feel that if we go through these particular agencies and we do have questions, that we can get a better understanding when we come to the end as to where we go from there. I would like to see this process speed up, but again, what I'm concerned is if we just accept everything and then start from there, we wouldn't have done due diligence in what we've been doing over these past several days. We went through several agencies, again, in education. There was a restoration on one and not the others. There was a restoration for judiciary. And I think for some of the members of the body, for me, I went against the amendment, and it was nothing personal. I just saw some of the issues that we had to deal as a body in terms of formulating a balanced budget. But when I talked to some of my colleagues, both from the minority and the majority, it was an argument by one of the. I think it was an argument made by one of the minority that sold a member of the majority, and I think it was in regards to separate branches of government, and of course for this particular senator, he has a longer history in politics than I do, or at least in understanding of the relationships between the executive branch, the legislative branch, and the judiciary branch. And the argument that particular argument wasn't even budgetary. It was an argument of the sanctity of the three branches of government, is what sold some of the members of this legislative body towards voting for the reinstatement of the appropriation. So again, my concern is that in this particular amendment is that we've been pretty deliberative. I don't mind finding a way to speed up the process, but if I don't know whether that would be the best way of doing it. Anyway, that's my thoughts in this particular matter.
Yeah. Speaker Forbes.
The amendment's out of order. The rule was already established that the only amendments going to be entertained in this chapter are amendments to cut. So an amendment to do anything other than an amendment to cut is an amendment that is out of order. Now, having said that, it's up to you to rule, Mr. Chair, because you hold the chair right now, but I think the rule is established of what amendments are going to be entertained as we're in this chapter. With respect to simply accepting the cuts, I'm of the opinion cuts can go further, which is why I asked on day one when we took a look at public health and social services for the list of vacancies, because when I heard that the number of vacancies that remain was as large as it was, when I take a look at the number of months that are remaining in the fiscal year, when I hear the testimony from the director that says sometimes it takes him up to 9 months to fill a vacancy, when I do the math and recognize that there are 6 months left in the fiscal year, and if they're averaging 9 months to fill a vacancy, then they won't fill these vacancies until 3 months in the next fiscal year. It causes me to think, which is why I appreciate the motion made by Speaker Mpinko, that every department and agency ought to give us a look at the vacancy situation they have right now. We may discover as we go through this process that a lot more vacant positions out there than we thought there were. And if there are a lot of vacant positions out there, we can make some qualitative decisions about which of those vacancies can be filled in the remaining 6 months reasonably, which vacancies need to be filled in the next 6 months because of the critical nature of those particular positions, and which we can wait on until the next fiscal year at least, which will drive the expense side of this equation a little bit lower. And I think anything we can do to drive expenses down a little bit, we can do. Now, from my perspective, until we get, and we are getting them slowly but surely, but we're not getting them all, until we get some sense of what the vacancy situation is today, it's hard to fashion specific motions to address those vacancies. And I'm hoping that the word has gotten out, John, that the departments and agencies as they come in will have that ready. And for those today that didn't have it ready, I'm hopeful that by tomorrow you will have it ready. And I'm not talking about a blanket no vacancies get filled, but if we've got, and I think public health probably has more vacancies than most, I suspect. But on the other hand, if we talk about a department that has an additional 10 or 15 vacancies that have occurred because people have left or, for whatever reason, because there is attrition over the course of every fiscal year, I think it would be worthwhile to identify those and perhaps if the decision is made not to fill those vacancies over the next 6 months, to reduce the budget accordingly. And maybe it'll only be an extra few $100,000 here, an extra 30, 40, 50,000 here, blah, blah, blah. But you add all that up, and before you know it, you might have reduced the expenditure side of this particular baby by, maybe another $1 million, maybe another $2 million. Who knows? But I think that's something we got to do, especially in light of the fact that this is all being discussed in an atmosphere where there is the possibility lurking out there of people being furloughed. To me, you got a choice. You can furlough somebody, or you can simply remove the funding for a position that is vacant anyway and is not likely to be filled. You remove the funding for the position that is vacant anyway and is not likely to be filled. That's just, obvious. With respect to how long the discussion is taking of these departments, I think that is entirely a function of the members of the body. If you want the discussion to move at a quicker pace, it can. It just means maybe you don't, talk faster, don't talk as long, don't ask as many questions, make sure that the questions you are asking are on point to what it is we're trying to accomplish here, and I think things will move along more quickly. But I don't want to say that we're limiting ourselves to only reducing the budget as described in the governor's submittal, because we may discover, and for me personally, this vacancy thing is a big deal. We may discover as we go through the vacancies, and perhaps other brilliant ideas will pop up, that we can take this down a little bit more. And the more we take it down, the more we close the gap between the revenues and the expenditure side, the easier some other decisions might become. And it's certainly worth that effort, I think. And I realize that, it is Holy Week. I wish we'd been able to put in a full day yesterday, but alas, Typhoon, what was it? What was it? Ray Don Chong. What was the name of this thing?
Kong Ray.
Kong Ray, I don't know. I missed the days when there was Typhoon April, Karen, Pamela, but now it's Kong Ray and things like that. But Ray Don Chong, I thought it was but in any event, nobody planned on that. I surely didn't, and I want to send out a thank you prayer to the Lord that it missed and didn't affect Guam. But stuff happens, guys. And I think if we if we can get these staffing patterns in, if we can make sure that the departments to come have them with them, I think we can get a pretty good handle on this pretty quick. That's all I got to say.
All right, thank you. Senator Pangilinan.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. Mr. Chair, I certainly, I'm a little bit getting frustrated with the pace of the discussion, but I do want to say that the discussion is very valuable. It's something that I've advocated for. I think, we could have had these discussions in oversight hearings, because we're really asking about the program operations of the departments and the agencies, not the budget operations. And, had we, at the beginning of this term, gone into oversight hearings, a lot of these questions would have been answered, and then we could have focused on the financial resources needed to carry those programs out, or what programs are not going to be carried out given the financial condition of this government. The issue about the fact that the discussion leads us into finding out about vacancies, the vacancies that we find, we can zero out every single vacancy in the entire government of Guam, and we're not going to resolve the problem we're facing. Because the problem is that every single person that is getting a paycheck, when they get their paycheck, is going to total more money than we are going to collect. So that's the problem. We can zero out $20 million, $100 million in vacancies. But at the end of the day, the fact of the matter is that when we issue paychecks, when we pay for contracts, when we pay vendors, it's going to cost more than what we have now. And if we are serious, in fact, about zeroing out these vacancies, and we saw that with the Department of Public Health, we finished the discussions there. There were no additional requests or motion to reduce it by the vacancies identified. So we've passed that point. Now, maybe what we need to do is, when we identify vacancies in the other departments, we don't go until somebody asks the question, hey, is anybody going to reduce the appropriation level based upon the dollar value of those vacancies? And then we can act on it. But we've missed an opportunity here, and in order to cut the vacancy at the Department of Public Health by $2.3 million. And if we're going to go back and consider, it's going to have to be outside the norm of the rules, because as our good speaker Pinko knows, who's quite versed in the procedural matters related to the constraints that we have, as well as to the flexibility we have in the discussions in a committee as a whole, he'll remind you that you can't consider in the committee as a whole or reconsider a vote taken in the committee as a whole. So for that matter is the reconsideration of the vacancies identified in the Department of Public Health, that we have then accepted and adopted that budget according to the rules that we've set, in which we can only increase the reduction, and nobody did that. We've lost that opportunity. But I do want to say, again, that these are the considerations, but we really need to focus. One thing I want to make a request on is, in addition to the vacancies, I want to know what the cash burn rate is of all these departments and agencies. John, I sent a letter to the governor asking for the cash flow statements for current cash requirements for the current operations of the government, for the reduced operations proposed in the bill, for the current cash collections, for the increased cash collections, and which portion of the bill identifies those. And then I think that would help us kind of focus in terms of what is it that we need in order to run the current operation status quo, reduce levels, where reduced levels need to occur again. So I'd like to reiterate my request, Mr. De La Rosa. On that, I spoke with Lou. She said they were working on it, and so forth. But I think that will facilitate a lot of the argument considerations that we have. So those are my concerns, Mr. Chair.
You. Speaker Forbes, point of information.
I just want to point out that no one has suggested that we're going to balance the budget on the basis of vacancies. In fact, in my illustration, I was pretty clear about the fact that all we're doing is trying to narrow a difference, not trying to completely eliminate a difference. Secondarily, given the fact that the information that we're receiving, at least to my satisfaction, is still insufficient for the purposes of making those motions that Senator Pangilinan spoke about, I believe, and I will be offering, when we're at the end of the chapter, a general motion to reduce the vacancies cumulatively in all these departments and agencies. If Senator Pangilinan feels at that point that the motion is not in order, he can argue that. But I think that we would be operating at cross purposes, because I don't think there's any of us here who wants to fund things we don't need to fund in this particular budget. And tertiarily, the budget as submitted, this budget bill as submitted by the front office, is arranged in chapters. One of the last chapters of the budget dealt with revenue enhancement proposals, namely the 1% gross receipts tax increase, which we did delete. But when we get to that chapter, that's a wonderful opportunity for anyone who wishes to suggest any revenue enhancement proposals to make those proposals if they choose to. I think, John, that the governor's office itself, I presume when you get to that chapter, you're going to want to make some suggestions yourself, aren't you? Or are you just going to accept the revenues as they are? You guys are looking at alternatives, are you not?
We are looking at alternatives.
So, all in good course, I think Senator Pangalinan's point is well taken, that at some point here, we're going to have to rely on much more than just the elimination of vacancies to bring this in the balance. But we are currently in this chapter, and eventually we will get to the chapter that deals with that stuff. And when we get to the chapter that deals with that stuff, then those motions can be made by whomever wishes to make them.
Senator Gutherds?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. As I said, I'm learning this process little by little, but I thought that we are here because we're in a financial crisis. At least that was my understanding. And my thinking is, when you bring in these agencies one by one to ask questions about a 2.5% cut, that seems minuscule, when the real issue here really is the cash of this government. The government started this fiscal year really with about $100 million shortfall, cash shortfall. Our spending authority for fiscal year 2007 is $477 million. We've adopted sort of a revised revenue estimate of $453 million because of certain revenue enhancements that we talked about last week. This leaves us with a shortfall of $23.7 million to bridge us for 6 months. If you take the cuts of the agencies, which would add up to about 2.5%, that brings us down to $20.8 million, which is our shortfall. So when I look at the 2.5% cut to the departments and agencies against the $20.8 million shortfall that we're facing, this is why I was trying to express the need for us to move forward with the cuts minus specific objections by senators for particular areas and move into the other side of the equation. So that was what is behind my motion, Mr. Chairman.
I appreciate that. As the chair, it is my ruling that the motion is actually out of order, but I do understand what you're trying to achieve, and I think we all want to get there, and we can accomplish that through a more expeditious delivery of information and questions that are specific on point to the operations of the budgetary shortfalls. So we'll go ahead and rule your motion out of order this time, and we'll go ahead and proceed. Senator Lujan, you're the last to speak on this department. Senator Lujan, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Ms. Lighthouser, earlier you had said that you've been allocated $400,000 from Compact Impact. If I'm mistaken.
For our medication.
For medication. Okay, for medication. Okay, of the 400,000, you have received 200 to date?
Yes.
Okay. Is that okay? And that medication for all meds for
That's for children and adults.
children and adults?
Psychotropic medication.
Okay. Now, okay, and then you also said that your monthly med charges basically are about 80,000. You say?
Yes.
Okay. All right. What other sources of funding do you have for your meds?
Some of it is grants and then also local funding.
Okay. So your 80,000 basically your meds that roughly is just under $1 million a year on meds, right?
Yes.
Okay. And of the $400,000, 200 of which you have received to date, based on a 7-month med use. We're in our 7th month right now, April, right? Okay, so to date, basically you've incurred about $560,000 in meds, right?
Yes.
Okay, 200,000 you have received from Compact Impact. Okay, so to date you basically have an outstanding of $660,000 in med costs, right?
Yes.
Okay, has that been paid to date, or have you used your grant money and other sources to pay that?
Yeah, we're using our grant money and other sources to pay.
Okay, so you're paid to date.
We're paid to date, yes, sir.
You're paid. Okay. Okay. When do you expect to receive your additional $200,000?
10 working days.
10 working days from
this Friday.
From this coming Friday.
Yes.
Okay. Okay, and that will take you basically your basically about 2.5 months, right? To that, and then you have monies again, your other grants and other sources to cover for the rest of the fiscal year.
Yes.
Okay. So now these are inclusive of all meds.
Yes.
That's your med cost per year, about $1 million.
Yes.
Okay. Okay. That's it, Mr. Chair.
All right, thank you. Senator Pangilinan?
Just a couple of questions, Mr. Chair. First thing I want to say is I think this is the first agency that's come before us and said, we have a current cost that we're paying for, and we're going to reduce it, and that's how we're going to reduce our budget. So nobody else has come forth. Everyone's gone and said, we're going to cut what we're not spending. And that just doesn't work. It doesn't resolve the issue we're facing. Now, when you say you're going to cut your security contract, I'm assuming that's going to happen soon, and that the $174 or the whatever $130,000 or $13,000 a month you're currently paying, you're not going to incur that $13 for the rest of the fiscal year. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
So that's the real reduction. I think that's probably the first one I've seen that really is going to have an impact on the financial situation that the government's facing. I do want to ask a question with regards to the recent news story I thought I saw that said that Silver Lake Partners, or whatever the title of the entity is, the corporation, is now in charge of and managing the Department of Mental Health under the court decree.
Yes.
Is that correct or incorrect?
That's incorrect. They're not a receiver. To totally take over the department would mean that they were a receiver, like a federal receiver, and that's not what they are.
What are they?
Basically, what happened is because we engaged in a 7-phase contract with Silver Lake Incorporated, and there's different phases. The first phase was to do the Silver Lake minimum care requirements, and they've already completed that. There are
if I could just interrupt you as you go through, how was that funded?
That's funded locally.
Was that part of an appropriation given to you for that program?
Yeah, that was paid previously. Yes.
Not in this fiscal year.
Not in this fiscal year.
Okay. All right. Continue.
Yes. And it's a 7-phase contract. The next 2 phases are we're looking at our policy and procedures for that JCO inspection, and also to implement training on those policy and procedures. So we're working very closely with them. They're still going to provide the management expertise, but we're also have looked regionally for long-term partners that will not incur additional costs long-term. And so that's what we're working on in addition.
Is there a cost associated with this phase?
Yeah, there's a cost, and we're negotiating the cost because some of the things that they are offering to do for us, we've been able to locate locally for minimal cost.
Are those costs part of your budget, current fiscal year?
No, not for the current fiscal year, but they're included in next fiscal year.
So those costs will not be charged against any of the appropriations for this fiscal year?
Yes.
Have you spent or authorized expenditure for any program or any requirement beyond the appropriation levels for this fiscal year?
No.
No. So there's nothing with regards to the consent decree or anything at all that's impacting your current operating budget this year?
No.
No. Okay. All right. And the department now is going to enter into these initiatives, and all of these will once again, just for the record, not impact this year's operating requirements. They'll be accounted for next fiscal year.
Yes.
Okay. Thank you.
Yes, sir.
All right. Thank you. Are there any other questions? If not,
one final question. You mentioned an indirect cost, admin overhead cost charged to the grants. Now, does that reflect in a reduction in the administrative expenditure funded by the general fund in your budget?
Because early on we were told to look at our federal grants so that we could decrease personnel costs. So we did everything we could to all our administrative personnel that we could. We put onto a federal cost.
Okay, but I'm saying, I know, but that's in the federal cost, but that's under the direct program funding. But you say you keep an overhead administrative charge basically for administration of the grant that you say is taken out for admin. So for example, a $100,000 grant, 10%, $10,000. Is that $10,000 now that you have that and you're able to use for admin purposes, not for program costs now, for admin purposes, does that reduce your administrative budget requirement? Do you now reduce the general fund appropriation for administration by 10,000?
Yes,
You do?
yes.
Okay. Do we know where those are?
We could get a printout to show you that.
Okay. All right. Thank you very much.
Thank you. If there are no further comments, Section 3 is hereby adopted. We will resume tomorrow morning at 10 a.m. in the committee of the whole, at which time GMH will be brought to bear on questions by the body. All right? We'll be in recess till 10 a.m.